Chapter 720. Crackle Crackle. At the stall where old he and the others were distributing pork with great fanfare outside the city. In Chang'an city, the sound of firecrackers was heard continuously. In the sound of firecrackers, the red cloth on the signboards of the strange signboards named Chang'an Hotel, Number 1 Branch, White Deer College Branch, was revealed in front of the shocked eyes of all the onlookers. Those who were familiar with them would not forget that most of those shops belonged to the Crown Prince, Li Chengqian, Chengchumo, Zhang Sun, Chong, the Du family, and the Wei family. That was the most shocking thing. The signboards of those strange hotels were exactly the same. The only difference was that they were arranged in order from Number 1 Branch to Number 2 Branch. After the firecrackers stopped, the shop owners came out to greet the customers. All the old and young men of Chang'an city. Today is the opening day of our small shop. Everything is half price. I hope you can help us. As the shop owner's voice fell, everyone could not sit still. However, those who could enter were either officials or rich businessmen in Chang'an city. After all, the Crown Prince and the others were famous. Today was the opening day of their shop, so their eyes were very bright. If they did not go in to support them, it would be terrible if they came to settle accounts with them later. Everyone had no choice but to enter the small restaurant. On the one hand, they wanted to see what this strange shop was selling. On the other hand, they wanted to choose a side. Obviously, the Crown Prince was creating momentum. Moreover, they also knew what happened outside the city. The Crown Prince stirred up trouble in Shao Mountain and opened an academy. Everyone knew that. Now, he came up with such a thing. Who would not be curious? As soon as they entered the door. Just like that, he sat there steadily. In an instant, a manservant ran over with a tray in tow. "Gentlemen, what would you like to eat?" While speaking, the waiter put the tray in front of them. In an instant, the things on the tray made everyone's eyes light up. There were more than a dozen bamboo slices on the tray. The names of dishes were written on the bamboo slices. Moreover, they had never heard of these dishes before. Braised pork with soy sauce. Braised pork knuckle with soy sauce, stir-fried kidney, and so on. This left everyone dumbfounded. At the entrance of the most conspicuous Taihe Inn in the East Market, the manager of Taihe Inn, who was also an inner disciple of the chief minister of Taichung Temple, saw that the Crown Prince's restaurant had changed its appearance. He couldn't help but rush into the restaurant with gifts. The manservant seemed to recognize him and personally called the shopkeeper over. The shopkeeper cupped his fists and said, "I didn't think that shopkeeper's son would come to visit. You've really made my humble store shine. You're too kind. We're all people inside. It's only right that we help each other." Both of them knew each other very well, so they didn't waste any time on pleasantries and went straight into the topic. Manager's son pointed at the plates on the tray and asked, "What are these dishes?" The restaurant manager cupped his fists and said, "Please allow me to keep you in suspense. You and I are old acquaintances. Today's meal is on me." Hearing this, shopkeeper's son waved his hands. Although this person was an ordinary person like him, he was someone from the Crown Prince's residence. He had no way of establishing ties with him. However, he couldn't refuse to give face to him. Looking at the people watching from the entrance, he could only give up. 3 bamboo tubes were served. After waiting for the time it takes to brew a cup of tea, shopkeeper's son's nose twitched. He couldn't help but lose his calm. The people watching from outside couldn't help but be attracted by the fragrance. They couldn't help but walk into the small restaurant. They casually ordered a few dishes that sounded pretty good. Then, everyone stared at the linen curtain in the kitchen. "The dishes are here." A moment later, Fatty Zhou personally carried a large tray out of the kitchen. In an instant, shopkeeper's son hurriedly stood up and bowed to Fatty Zhou. "Imperial Chef Zhou, why are you here?" "Imperial Chef Zhou? What's going on?" Everyone was stunned. After Imperial Chef Zhou put down the dishes, he smiled and said, "Everyone, please don't be polite and don't take offense. The shopkeeper of this restaurant today is a relative of mine, and I have nothing better to do, so I came to help. All the servants here were trained by me, so there's no need to be polite. Come. Everyone sit. Everyone who can come today, it's all on my head." Everyone was shocked when they heard this. The legend of Imperial Chef Zhou was well known. This barbecue incident was because of the rumors that Imperial Chef Zhou had a good master. After learning from his master for less than a month, he became an imperial chef in the palace. How could this be possible? The people trained by him, then, while everyone was chatting, the dishes were all served. But, seeing that Imperial Chef Zhou didn't say anything, no one dared to move their chopsticks. They could only smell the delicious food and drool. As expected of an imperial chef, the dishes made by him are simply, compared to the dishes you made, everything we've eaten before is like pig feed. I don't know. Apart from this restaurant, I don't think it's possible to find such delicacies. Imperial Chef Zhou, what kind of meat is used in these dishes? Why do I feel that it's not any kind of meat that I know? That's right, Imperial Chef Zhou. Could I trouble you to tell me what kind of meat this is? Why is it so fragrant? It's not as dry as mutton, nor is it like any other kind of meat. Instead, when I eat it, it has a juicy feeling. Fatty Zhou rolled his eyes and said, "Do you really want to know?" When everyone heard this, how could they be willing? They hurriedly asked, "Please tell us." "Do you really want to know?" Fatty Zhou asked. How could they bear this kind of torture? They all begged. Fatty Zhou pointed at the door and said, "Do you know what happened outside the city today?" Everyone was stunned. Then, they looked at the delicately cut meat on the plate and two words flashed in their minds. This is pork? Chapter 721. How could they not know what kind of meat it was? However, none of them were as panicked as Fatty Zhou was. Instead, they began to carefully savor the taste of the food after learning about it. Manager's son narrowed his eyes and frowned. He tasted the meat for a long time before saying, "Imperial Chef Zhou, may I ask why this thing doesn't have the stench of pork? Instead, it has an indescribable allure?" Imperial Chef Zhou cupped his fists and sat down. He waved his hand and a chef instantly brought out a large tray containing the pig head meat. Imperial Chef Zhou didn't avoid arousing suspicion. He used a small knife to cut the meat piece by piece, then dipped it in the dipping sauce and threw it into his mouth. He then said, "I don't know. My teacher didn't tell me, and as a student, I didn't dare to ask." Hearing this, everyone couldn't help but be stunned. They all knew about the 300,000 pigs that went to Shao Mountain yesterday. But today, so much pork appeared in Chang'an. They couldn't help but feel puzzled. But thinking about it, they suddenly thought of an extremely terrifying thing. That was the Crown Prince. These stores were all the Crown Prince's businesses. Moreover, on the first day of opening, he actually called an imperial chef. This was something that ordinary people couldn't do. Only the Crown Prince could do it. Moreover, he said that the chefs in these stores were all personally trained by Imperial Chef Zhou. Did that mean that the things sold in these stores were almost the same? Then, some time ago, they heard that Divine Doctor's son went to White Deer College in Shao Mountain and didn't come back. Then, they heard that something happened to the dean of White Deer College. Jing Shu made a scene in Chang'an City. Then, the matter was left unsettled. After that, it was the 300,000 pigs and everything that happened today. Could it be that Zhang Feng was Imperial Chef Zhou's teacher? How could this be? This was simply unheard of. All right? Manager's son couldn't help but ask, "Imperial Chef Zhou, may I ask if your teacher is the dean of White Deer College in Shao Mountain, Viscount Zhang Feng, Lord Zhang?" Fatty Zhou heard this and hurriedly stood up. His face was incomparably respectful as he cupped his hands towards the door and said, "You're right. My teacher is Lord Zhang." Buzz. In an instant, everyone's heads exploded. Understood. Everything was clear now. Everything was clear now. Everyone suddenly thought of the imperial edict from before. Didn't the imperial edict already mention the skill of cooking? Now that they thought about it and looked at Imperial Chef Zhou's cooking skills, and then looked at the dishes that they had never heard of before, they suddenly felt that they were too short-sighted to have mocked the academy behind their backs. Once they thought of this, how could they sit still when they were basically businessmen? One by one, they took out their copper coins and prepared to pay the bill. It was over. Even if they had to sell their pots and pans, they had to let their children go to Mount Shao. This was simply, however, The shopkeeper glanced at everyone's money and remained unmoved as he said, "Thank you, this shop does not accept money." Just as manager's son was about to hand over the money, he couldn't help but stop. "Old Pan, what do you mean by this?" Manager Pan of Chang'an Hotel smiled and pointed at a notice in the middle of the hall. "This is the order from above. All the dishes and drinks will be sold according to grain. But we are all regular customers, and today is the opening day of the restaurant. So, I can't do anything about it." What kind of rule was this? 1 plate of grain for 1 dish? Although it sounded like they had gotten a great bargain, what was the price of grain now? They didn't even dare to think about it. Although the most common price on the market was 10 copper coins, 10 copper coins per dish was simply too cheap. If it was in the past, they would definitely eat until this small shop went bankrupt. But now it was impossible. Everyone was lacking in grain, and the market had a price but no supply. This made them feel uneasy. It wasn't that they couldn't take out food. After all, they worked for the officials, and naturally, the officials wouldn't starve them. Moreover, as people who often mingled with the merchants, naturally, their families relied on their connections to store food. It was just this. But when they remembered that this was the Crown Prince's shop, they could only laugh and go home to get the grain. This kind of thing didn't just happen in this shop in the Eastern Market. Basically, the 70 or so Chang'an hotels that opened today all had the same rule. In a moment, the news spread like wildfire in Chang'an. "Have you heard? The 70 or so Chang'an hotels that open today don't sell money, they only accept grain." In a tea house, people gathered together to discuss this rare thing. A middle-aged man in fine clothes who had just entered sighed when he saw several old friends. In an instant, this voice attracted everyone's attention. Everyone had never heard of such a rare thing before. They hurriedly asked, "Isn't this the shopkeeper of the tavern? Are you talking about the 70 or so shops that opened at the same time in Chang'an City today?" Hearing this, the middle-aged man stood up and cupped his hands in front of the crowd. "Isn't that right? Today, a tavern opened next to my tavern, but the owner of this tavern is a mysterious big shot. So, I went there to show my support and get familiar with him. But guess what? I ate 3 plates of meat dishes and received 3 pounds of grain from him. But I heard that the dishes there were prepared by people from the palace." Hearing this, the crowd couldn't help but be in an uproar. What? There's such a good thing. 3 plates of food for only 3 pounds of grain. But why does this shop only accept grain? Let's go and take a look. Chapter 722. For the entire morning, Zhang Feng had been busy with the papermaking workshop. After all, the construction of the academy was about to enter its final stage. Now that the main construction had been completed, only the final painting was left, as well as the layout of the roads and courtyards. Zhang Feng did not need to worry about these things. After all, other than the red paint, there was also the structure of the main construction. Even the firing of the cement and lime powder were basically done by the people of Tonghui Workshop, as well as Ganziyuan. This saved Zhang Feng a lot of trouble. Otherwise, Zhang Feng would have been driven crazy. However, seeing that the main construction of the academy was about to be completed, Zhang Feng was anxious to build up the reputation of the academy. Moreover, when attracting students, it was better to find teachers. Otherwise, when the time came, it would be embarrassing for the academy. Therefore, all of this was attributed to the papermaking technique. Once the paper was produced, Zhang Feng even thought about how to use the paper. However, after thinking about it, the paper was still too little. Just as Zhang Feng was lying on the recliner, thinking about whether to use primary school books as the basis for the textbooks, or to start with the standard Chinese alphabet. However, at this moment, Wei Shuyu, who was in charge of keeping watch, hurriedly knocked on Zhang Feng's door. Without waiting for Zhang Feng to greet her, Wei Shuyu said, "Lao Li is here." Without waiting for him to finish speaking, he heard a greeting from outside the door. As soon as Zhang Feng came out, he saw Li Shimin looking around the kitchen with his hands behind his back. He was still asking about the situation at the foot of the mountain. When he saw Zhang Feng come out, he laughed and said, "Today, Chang'an City can be said to be the most lively in more than a month." Zhang Feng understood what Li Shimin was talking about. he clasped his fist and said, "Now your lifeless business has seen the light, right? Ha! Let's go, let's talk inside." Li Shimin laughed. Along the way, Li Shimin walked very slowly. Inside the palanquin, one secret report after another was delivered to him all the way up the mountain. These were all the changes that happened in Chang'an city today. That was not right. It was about everything in Chang'an city, including the business situation of the shops of the Crown Prince and the others, especially the impact of this incident on Chang'an city. Although the harvest today wasn't much, these 70 shops had already harvested at least 10 dans worth of grain in just over 2 hours. This undoubtedly made Li Shimin excited. Originally, he could only watch helplessly as the pig died. However, in the hands of Zhang Feng, not only did he eliminate the stench, but he also made it so delicious. Until now, when he thought of the braised pig trotters, Li Shimin couldn't help but salivate. Even Hunyang Mohu, whom he was proud of, couldn't help but like the latter more. Although it was a little greasy, wasn't that the nature of meat? Zhang Feng didn't say much. Anyway, he knew that Lao Li's purpose of going up the mountain today was nothing more than to get the pork agency right. After the two sat down, Li Shimin didn't talk nonsense. He asked, "Fengzi, I came here mainly because of the dispatch of troops. Now the troops have been dispatched, but when can we start to work on the weapons?" "But you're not a general, and you're not going to war. Why do you ask this?" Li Shimin was really stumped by Zhang Feng's question. Li Shimin's eyes flashed, and he hurriedly said, "Isn't it because Longjiudo, Guanyi Dao, and Tubo all have our businesses? I have to ask about this. Otherwise, if a war breaks out, it will be us who suffer, won't it? Besides, I also want to get your impenetrable shield and spear as soon as possible. Otherwise, if those Tubo people attack us, we have to have something to defend against them, right?" Li Shimin hurriedly corrected his words. Li Shimin really didn't want to send troops to help Tubo this time. He always wanted to do something. However, after hearing about Zhang Feng's magical training method, as well as these weapons, although he suppressed his thoughts, he still kept them in his heart. After all, if he could get these things a day earlier, to be honest, Li Shimin's dreams would be more comfortable at night. But Zhang Feng pointed outside and said, "You also saw what happened outside. I was dragged out of bed in the morning before the sun rose. How can I have time to do these things? At the very least, you have to wait. A month later. You don't have to worry about this. Last time, your two subordinates, Old Yu and Old Qin, got the training manual from me. Those things are still useful for the time being, you don't have to worry about it." Li Shimin wanted to say something, but in the end, he couldn't say anything. He also saw what happened. Now that the mountain was in a mess, and Zhang Feng, who usually paid special attention to his appearance, was now covered in smoke and fire. Li Shimin couldn't say anything. He pointed at the kitchen outside and said, "What are you going to do with the one at the foot of the mountain? I saw dozens of people cooking braised meat in a big shed today. Are these the ones outside Chang'an city?" Zhang Feng nodded. "Lao Li, next time when you do these things, you have to use your brain more. We've known each other for more than half a year. Look at how stupid you are. If I wasn't smart, my White Deer College would be in big trouble this time." Chapter 723. Li Shimin knew what Zhang Feng wanted to say. She had covered his mouth long ago. Li Shimin also knew that Zhang Feng was purposely changing the topic. He could only sigh helplessly and not say anything else. He also knew that haste made waste. Moreover, the current situation had not reached the point where they had to fight. After all, they had gone to Tubo. As for when they would be able to return, it was hard to say. Moreover, Fengzi had also said that there was still a month or so before they could start tinkering. Moreover, Yu Qigong's training method for the new army would only show results after a month or so of weather. Therefore, after Li Shimin sighed, he could only drop the matter. "Are you talking about yesterday's matter? Qian, really did go overboard with this matter." Li Shimin smiled and shook his head as he continued, "Last night, I heard that you almost had an accident? No, you almost had an accident twice? What's going on? The first time was when you asked the old scholar to secretly brew wine for you. The second time was last night. You almost scared people to death." Zhang Feng also knew that he had gone overboard last time. He rubbed his nose and said, "Who told old He and Feng Zi to not understand what I meant? Moreover, if I let you have diarrhea for 2 or 3 days, would you be able to take it? As for yesterday, I was comprehending the mysteries of heaven." Li Shimin could not help but reveal a look of disdain when he heard this. "Speak human language." Zhang Feng rubbed his nose and said, 300,000 pigs. You Lao Li also know what this means. If those stubborn old scholars knew about this, they would be deceiving their masters and destroying their ancestors. It would be an insult to the teachings of Confucius and Mencius. It would be an insult to the imperial edict. Lao Li, think about it for a moment. What does this mean? Once this matter is spread, the first emperor will be furious. If things don't go well, my head and the few of us will fall to the ground. Tell me, if this happened to you, wouldn't you be anxious? I'm thinking of a way. If something goes wrong, we'll all go to the guillotine today. Letting them worry for a night is already a light punishment. Who told your son not to use his brain before doing anything? Zhang Feng directly threw the responsibility to Li Qingqian. Who asked this brat to set him up? What Zhang Feng didn't know was that this matter was instigated by Li Shimin. His purpose was to show off in front of Zhang Feng, and then find out the method to create the invincible spear. Even if Zhang Feng couldn't solve this matter, Li Shimin had a way to forcefully calm this matter down. After all, currently, Shao Mountain was still under the banner of providing relief to the victims of the disaster. When Li Shimin didn't know that Zhang Feng had such a method, this pork could be eaten when he was hungry. At least, Li Shimin knew to add this thing in the porridge. As long as this gimmick existed, Li Shimin could calm this matter down. But he didn't expect that Zhang Feng could solve it so easily. Li Shimin suddenly felt that it was a little boring. Originally, he wanted to show off in front of this brat and get back his face, but now it seemed that, however, Li Shimin really had something to ask of him this time on the mountain. Feng, I met old He outside the city and he also ate the braised meat you made. I also saw that Chang'an city is basically now, whether it's the guards or the civilians, they are all fighting for this delicacy. Do you want to use this method to get rid of the 300,000 pigs? Zhang Feng shook the recliner with certainty and said while lying on it, Don't you know what your son is doing in the city? Of course I know this. If he dares to do this without my permission, his legs will be broken. Isn't that enough? Since you know it, you naturally know my purpose. You also know that I am a businessman. You also know how many pigs the Tang dynasty has made this time, so how could Zhang Feng not know what Li Shimin wanted to do? He smiled faintly and said, Lao Li, I know the purpose of your visit today is to get this formula, right? What are you talking about? How can I be that kind of person? The main purpose of my visit today is to worry about you, isn't it? While speaking, Li Shimin waved at the door. Little Gizi hurriedly took 2 boxes wrapped in red silk from behind him and carefully entered Zhang Feng's living room. In front of Li Shimin, he said, Prince Zhang, this is the 300-year-old ginseng that my master has treasured for many years and is reluctant to use. And this, brother Zhang Feng, this is my precious treasure. It is also the preface to the orchid pavilion that I promised you last time. Since your academy has opened as a brother, it is not right if I don't give you a decent gift. Come, take a look. Although Li Shimin was reluctant, he still took out the preface to the orchid pavilion and the 300-year-old ginseng. Zhang Feng did not care about the ginseng. At this time, his eyes were attracted by the red silk box that Li Shimin was reluctant to put down. He gently opened the 3 layers of red silk and saw a red sandalwood box carved with the 3 stars Fu, Lu, and Shou, as well as the teaching of Confucius and Mencius. In an instant, a scroll that was still wrapped in gauze appeared in Zhang Feng's sight. When he saw this, Zhang Feng also knew Li Shimin's purpose. Instead, he closed the red sandalwood lid and looked at Li Shimin and said, Lao Li, you are really awesome. You got the right to be my first agent in the Tang dynasty with this calligraphy. I have to be convinced. Chapter 724. Li Shimin really didn't understand the new words that popped out of Zhang Feng's mouth from time to time. When Zhang Feng said this thing, Li Shimin didn't even bother to ask. Anyway, The general meaning was that Zhang Feng was already considered to be the one to take care of this matter. Li Shimin stroked his beard and thought for a while before asking, "What is this agency thing you're talking about?" Zhang Feng had long known that Li Shimin didn't understand. Hearing his question, he immediately perked up. "Let me tell you, the meaning of this thing is, ahem, get to the point." Li Shimin coughed and interrupted Zhang Feng's endless speech. Zhang Feng smacked his lips and sighed that he had met a bad person. Then he said, "You also know that my academy is now gaining fame, so the name of the store must be decided by me. That is to say, you can partner with me, but this store, I don't care where you open it, but this name must be mine." Li Shimin thought for a while and asked, "Won't it be the same name as Li Gan's store?" Li Shimin was a little speechless. Such a good thing was ruined by a store name. Not to mention other things, if you said you didn't know how to name it, you could just call it White Deer Hall or White Deer Building, etc. As for using Chang'an and Hotel No. 1 Store, or White Deer College Store, what was going on? Li Shimin felt a headache when he thought that the whole Tang dynasty would have such a name in the future. How shameful! Thinking of this, Li Shimin was a little speechless. He asked, "Can this name be changed? It's too much." "It's too unpleasant, isn't it?" Zhang Feng glanced at Li Shimin and continued, "In fact, what I want to say is that you really don't know how to appreciate the coldness of this thing. Look, is this a place to eat?" Li Shimin nodded. Zhang Feng continued to ask, "Then is this shop a branch of White Deer College?" Li Shimin immediately shook his head. Zhang Feng was about to say something, but after Li Shimin's uncooperative words, all the words in his stomach were instantly stuck in his throat, unable to go up. Zhang Feng felt very uncomfortable. He smacked his lips and asked, "No, what I mean is, do you not understand at all?" Zhang Feng was speechless. Li Shimin nodded, then shook his head. What a joke! He knew Zhang Feng's character very well. This guy was a chatterbox. Without you noticing, he would spout out all the things you wanted to know. This was good, but it was easy to be led astray. Hence, Li Shimin learned to be smart. He wouldn't give you a chance to show off. Li Shimin shook his head. "I don't understand. I can understand that the business is a partnership. But I don't understand if you want to use the name of the shop. Also, who came up with this name? Isn't it a little too unpleasant?" "No, but I think the name sounds pretty good. Besides, you'll be the one providing the shop and the cook, while I'll be the one providing the skills and the recipes for the braised meat and other things. This is a win-win situation. Do you know what to do? This means that you only need to provide a shop assistant who knows how to manage the shop and a few other servants. As for the chef, do you see the foot of the mountain? There's such a big food factory at the foot of the mountain. Everyone there is learning how to cook. When the time comes, I'll send these people to your shop for free. You'll be taking advantage of me. Do you know that?" Li Shimin really understood now. "So, after talking for so long, you just want me to work for him?" Hearing this, Zhang Feng coughed. He didn't say anything. He pointed to the door and walked out of the room with Li Shimin. They went to the kitchen. At this time, although old He and the rest were busy at the foot of the mountain, the women and children of Tong Huifang, as well as the 7 aunties from Tong Huifang's neighborhood, had become the main chefs on the mountain. Although Zhang Feng didn't teach them, under the guidance of old He and the rest, as well as the old village chief, these people improved very quickly. After all, here, not only could they learn skills, they could also eat their fill. Their children could also do some work. If they were lucky, they could even enter the academy. How could they not work hard? At this time, they saw Zhang Feng come. Everyone stopped what they were doing and greeted him. Zhang Feng cupped his fist to everyone, then pointed to the pot in the kitchen where the sauce was boiling and said, "Look, smell loudly. This thing, not to mention Dr. Sun, even if I put the meat in front of you, if you can make the same thing for me, it'll be my loss, okay? This thing is the key to braised meat. It's also the essence. Don't look down on this small bag. This bag, even if you give me 1,000 taels of gold, I won't sell it." Now, do you think that I'm going too far? However, at this time, Li Shimin's eyes were stunned by a layer of stone-like thing on the stove. While dealing with Zhang Feng, he asked, "Fengzi, what is this thing?" "This?" Zhang Feng was also stunned. Looking at the cement on the stove that Li Shimin pointed to, he said, "This is cement." Li Shimin was stunned. He asked subconsciously, "What? Cement? What is this? The mud in the field?" Chapter 725. Zhang Feng was also dumbfounded. He was almost amused by Li Shimin's words. However, Zhang Feng suppressed his laughter and said, "I don't blame you for not knowing this. But you can't think of the mud in the field, right?" Li Shimin knew that this kid was laughing at him again. His face stiffened. Seeing this, Zhang Feng didn't say anything else. He pointed to the smoky mountain not far away and said, "Actually, I chose this place for a reason. The reason is that this ore is produced here." Li Shimin was dumbfounded. "Fengzi, tell me about this. But shouldn't we deal with this first?" Zhang Feng pointed to the thing in the pot. Li Shimin slapped his head and said, "Then we'll do as you say. But don't be stingy about the recipe. Don't burn anything that should be given to me. Give it all to me." Zhang Feng was overjoyed when he heard this. If Li Chengqian and the others were to do it, he would be a little worried. After all, this thing would delay their studies. However, if Lao Li were to do it, it would be different. This way, not only would it cover Chang'an city, but the entire Tang dynasty. By then, White Deer College would be famous. At this time, seeing Li Shimin like this, Zhang Feng immediately cupped his fist and said, "Then, in the future, you have to look for Du Daibiang and Li Gan to negotiate with them. As for the specific matters, although our friendship is here, brothers still have to settle accounts clearly, right? So how do you plan to do it?" At this point, Li Shimin couldn't help but be shocked. This was money, and Li Shimin would meet it in the future. As long as Zhang Feng imparted his culinary skills, he would definitely make a lot of money in the Tang dynasty and even the whole world. That was why Li Shimin was so nervous at this time. Seeing Li Shimin as if he was facing a formidable enemy. Zhang Feng was speechless. "Come on, aren't we brothers? If that's the case, let's split it 50-50? "No way. You've only contributed one piece of technology. No matter what, I'll still get 70% of it. No. I spent a lot of effort to come up with this formula. Then give me my preface to the Orchid Pavilion." Li Shimin used his trump card, and Zhang Feng was instantly terrified. "All right, let's split it evenly then. After all, there are still many ways to earn money in the future." Zhang Feng could only admit defeat, but Li Shimin's next sentence instantly made Zhang Feng's hair stand on end. "Feng Zi, why don't you give me the wine you asked the old scholar to brew? I'll make it for you. I promise to hire the best winemaker for you. When the time comes, this thing will definitely be more profitable than this braised meat. Think about it. You've already made such a heaven-shaking dish. How could you lack such fine wine? Don't you think so?" Li Shimin fanned Zhang Feng's ears over and over again. Zhang Feng thought about it carefully and realized that it was indeed so. He couldn't help but squat on the pile of bricks outside the kitchen with Li Shimin. Li Shimin's saliva splattered everywhere as he talked. Zhang Feng died just like that. He was slowly led astray. "Feng Zi, let me tell you. Fine wine goes with fine food. You should understand this principle, right? Look, you have such delicious food, but you're missing this. Fine wine. This is like a newlywed without a bride. Don't you feel bad? And this fine wine. Think about it. How many great scholars need fine wine to create heaven-shaking works? And the commoners also need such fine wine to numb their troubles. Tell me, you have such fine wine, but you're still hiding it. What is this? This is a crime of possessing a treasure. What if one day those great scholars find out that this fine wine was made by you, but you've been hiding it? What do you think will happen? Those great scholars will definitely condemn you in speech and in writing. Now that you've made it, they will only be grateful and think that you're a great talent. But if word gets out that you have fine wine here in the future, have you thought about the consequences?" Li Shimin instilled the advantages and disadvantages of it over and over again. Zhang Feng was also dumbfounded. He really didn't think about this matter. The thing that came to Zhang Feng's mind the most was that if he could bring out this fine wine, his reputation would soar. Moreover, he would have the same reputation as wine ancestor Du Kong. Zhang Feng couldn't help but feel a little excited. Lao Li, tell me, does this wine have any other abilities? Li Shimin heard this and knew that Zhang Feng was on the right track. He hurriedly put on a straight face and said, "Look at you. Where's your usual wisdom? Where's your usual shrewdness? Why did you forget an important thing?" Zhang Feng was a little confused. "What thing?" Li Shimin patted Zhang Feng on the shoulder with a smile and said, "You forgot your advantage, that is, this wine is unique. Last time, I even gave this wine to Lord Chang'an. I even heard that His Majesty was full of praise for your wine. Do you know what this means?" Zhang Feng shook his head in a daze. "This means that once you plan to make this fine wine thoroughly, the emperor will be very happy. Maybe he will even summon you to the palace in an instant." Zhang Feng was completely confused. He also became inexplicably excited. Li Shimin took the opportunity to say, "Think about wine god Du Kong. This time, your wine will definitely be regarded as the national wine of the Tang dynasty." Buzz. Chapter 726. Zhang Feng was a little excited. He really didn't expect that a little white wine could actually cause such a big reaction. It surpassed wine sage Du Kong. Involuntarily, Zhang Feng's heart was beating wildly. Then Zhang Feng looked around, grabbed Li Shimin's hand, and went into the house. As he walked, he shouted, "Zhu Zi's mother, hurry up and prepare some dishes for me. I want pork kidneys." Li Shimin looked at all this with a smile. He didn't stop Zhang Feng and just let him go into the house. For the first time, Li Shimin showed off in front of Zhang Feng. Li Shimin couldn't help but laugh wildly in his heart. As soon as they entered the house, Zhang Feng closed the door tightly. Then, he took out a jar of wine covered in dust from under the bed and sighed, "Lao Li, this is the last jar of wine that I deliberately collected. Whether it's in the pub, on the mountain, or at the foot of the mountain, this is the last jar." When Li Shimin heard this, his eyes couldn't help but light up. "Lao Li, now tell me, what are the benefits of this national wine?" As soon as Zhang Feng sat down and poured a bowl of wine for Li Shimin, he couldn't wait to ask. Li Shimin wasn't in a hurry. He drank a mouthful of wine happily and said, "The so-called national wine is specially provided by the royal family. Once this thing is pasted on, then your wine, even if it's inferior wine on the street, will instantly rise in status. Something that costs 1 copper coin can instantly skyrocket to 100 copper coins per caddy. You understand this, right?" How could Zhang Feng not understand? This was the F*King brand effect. But what he didn't know was that this actually existed during the Tang dynasty. Zhang Feng continued to ask, "What other benefits are there?" "What benefits?" Li Shimin smiled. "You have to know that once this thing appears in the royal family, let alone in the Tang dynasty, even if this wine is sold to other countries, this wine will not be sold at this price. You also know that your wine is sweet and strong." When Zhang Feng heard this, his eyes instantly widened like copper coins. He said, "I understand. You mean you want to directly sell this wine to the Turks, Persia, and other places, and use this wine to become the 4th largest export brand of the Tang dynasty?" Li Shimin was a little confused. "It's not about brands. Now, the tea leaves, silk, and porcelain of the Tang dynasty have basically become common commercial products. Every year, the Tang dynasty will buy a large amount of wine from Persia and other places, as well as a kind of Turk's horse milk wine, Tubo's Highland barley wine, and the wine of the Tang dynasty is called tragic." Li Shimin sighed and said, "Wine has always been an indispensable thing in life. Think about it, if the Tang dynasty and the Turks go to war, the trade route will inevitably pass through the Turks. At this time, the Turks are at a disadvantage because the Tang dynasty exchanged food for horses. Once the war starts, if they put something in the wine..." Zhang Feng understood. He completely understood Li Shimin's ambition. He wanted to completely cut off the wine of the Turks and other countries, then replace Zhang Feng's wine, and then dump it to them? Involuntarily, Zhang Feng's mind became active. Just now, he was too excited and forgot a lot of things. At this time, when Li Shimin said it, he immediately understood. He couldn't help but be excited. "Old Li, I'll leave this matter to you. I'll write you a letter later, and you can go and find the old elementary scholar yourself. But this thing, please don't tell anyone. When it's time to make the wine, come and find me. I'll give you something. Take it and put it in the distiller's grains. How about 3 days later? Li Shimin's eyes twinkled. But he also knew that everyone had something they wanted to keep. If Zhang Feng walked out of the corner, the loss would outweigh the gain. Li Shimin couldn't help but no longer insist. All right, since that's the case, it's settled then. Just as Li Shimin was talking, Zhu Zi's mother gently knocked on the door. Zhang Feng took the dishes and started eating with Li Shimin. While eating, Zhang Feng talked about the structure of the cement and so on in an exaggerated manner. Li Shimin was also shocked by Zhang Feng's description of the reinforced concrete. Fengzi, you said that the house can be built dozens of feet high? How is this possible? Even in books, they wouldn't dare to write like this. Where did you learn all this from? Zhang Feng definitely wouldn't tell him these things. Li Shimin couldn't help but be tempted when he thought of the project in Luozhou. Fengzi, this cement you mentioned, can it be produced in large quantities now? Zhang Feng shook his head and sighed. Not at the moment. After all, we have to wait until the academy is completely built before we can see the results of the cement. For now, we only know that its adhesion is very good. As for its resistance to pressure, I don't know. Li Shiming's figure instantly vanished and he said, Then, you have to take good care of this thing. If this thing of yours appears in the future, then it'll be able to make a name for White Deer Academy. Just like this braised meat and this fine wine. Zhang Feng was stunned when he heard about the fine wine. Li Shimin saw that the situation wasn't right and hurriedly said, Today's matter is settled. I still have things to do, so I'll take my leave first. As he spoke, he didn't wait for Zhang Feng to reply and hurriedly left. Zhang Feng was left sitting there in a daze. When Li Shimin was about to disappear from sight, Zhang Feng suddenly came to his senses. He rushed out of the door and shouted angrily, Lao Li, you're not kind. You actually tricked me. Chapter 727. But at this time, Li Shimin had already run away. Even if he heard it, it was not easy for him to get the wine from Zhang Feng. How could he spit it out? He could imagine that if he met someone like King Zhenla, once he took out such a good thing, he would gain a lot of face. What was this? This was the face of the Tang dynasty. On the mountain, Zhang Feng's roar instantly attracted everyone's attention. Wei Shuyu and the others, who had been paying attention to this place for a long time, hurried over and stared at Zhang Feng curiously. Then, they looked at the messy cups and plates on his table and the empty jar of wine. Cheng Chumo was unhappy. Fengzi, look at you. We are such good brothers and you still want to hide the good wine? However, Li Qingqian and Du Go were quite close to Zhang Feng. Seeing Zhang Feng's uncomfortable face, he asked, Fengzi, what happened with my father just now? When Zhang Feng heard this, he wanted to cry. He grabbed Li Qingqian's arm and roared with grief and indignation, I've been tricked by your father. Zhang Feng's roar directly confused the 5 people. Li Qingqian hurriedly asked, What's going on? We saw from afar just now. Didn't you two exaggerate? What's going on now? What's wrong? Go back and ask your father. I'm crying, brother. This is the only thing I can leave for my son. Your father won't even let this go. He even set me up. Tell me, where can I go to explain my reasoning? When Li Qingqian and the others heard this, they finally understood why Zhang Feng was like this. If it were someone else, they would really dare to help Zhang Feng get back at him. But who was that person? He was the emperor of the dynasty. Even if they were given 100 guts, they wouldn't dare to ask the emperor for justice. Wasn't this tantamount to courting death? They hurriedly comforted Zhang Feng. Fengzi, look, isn't this for your sake? You like to hide everything. Look at such good things. Even we don't dare to eat and drink too much. We're worried that we'll drink it all one day. Tai Niu is right. Look, since we've known each other until now, other than the ones you gave away, how much of it has been drunk by us? This won't do. My father, my relatives, and servants have long been drooling over this wine. You can't blame Li Gan's father. Think about the difficulties of doing business. If he knows that you have good wine at home, do you think he should give it away or not? If you give it away, there are only a few jars. If you don't give it away, won't you be offending them? Fengzi, 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 Fengzi. Just say that you're begging Ouyang Xiu. If you directly give him a cart of wine, believe it or not, when he finishes the entire cart of wine, you don't need to say anything, he will naturally come to you and beg you to be his teacher. Do you even need to go through so much trouble to beg him? When Zhang Feng heard this, he was even more confused. But when he thought about it, he instantly exploded. At the end of the day, you're all in cahoots? So this isn't your thing, right? Get the F***ck out of here and get to work. What are you all standing here for? Don't you need to eat? When they heard this, they knew that Zhang Feng was in a fit of anger. They shrunk their necks and hurriedly left. Although Zhang Feng was a little annoyed at being tricked, Lao Li and the others were right about one thing. This wine was bound to be released. It was only a matter of time and the impact it would cause. If it was released together with the braised meat now, the impact would be maximized. Once the people accepted the braised meat and the simple dishes he made, the matter of the wine would be just as Li Gan and the others had said. Everyone had relatives. Once the news slowly spread, it would be meaningless to come out at that time. When he thought of this, Zhang Feng couldn't help but sigh again. Sigh. Damn it, I was too careless. But fortunately, the last core technique was still in his hands. As long as this thing wasn't leaked, even if the winemaking technique was leaked, they wouldn't be able to brew this wine. However, just when Zhang Feng understood the whole situation, he suddenly felt a chill run down his spine. Li Shimin, who was leisurely sitting in the sedan chair and happily thinking about how Zhang Feng would fly into a rage, received a piece of news that made him extremely angry. Originally, he had come out this time to take a look at the school. On one hand, he wanted to see how the school was doing. On the other hand, he wanted to see what had happened to Zhang Feng. He had been hearing about White Deer College for the past 2 days, so he wanted to take a look. But he didn't expect that there would be an unexpected surprise. This could not help but make Li Shimin ecstatic. But just when he was still immersed in his excitement, he heard something that he didn't want to hear. Master Li, something happened. I'm really asking for help. Chapter 728. Chang'an and Drill Ground. It was originally set up in a secluded valley not far from the Shirley Slope. But after Zhang Feng went up Shao Mountain, Li Shimin set up the Chang'an and garrison camp between Chang'an and Shao Mountain. This camp not only included the garrison, but also included the training of the descendants of the various officials in Chang'an, and as well as the training of the imperial guards and city guards. But a few days ago, after Yu Qigong received Zhang Feng's training manual, the lazy atmosphere in the camp suddenly became terrifying. Before this, everyone used the status of their families to say that they were here to train, but in reality, they were just here to stay for a period of time. After that, they could go back and do whatever they wanted. But this Yuchi god of plague got a bunch of wood from somewhere and the 3 army gods appeared in the camp at the same time. That wasn't the most terrifying thing. In these 3 days, the 3 demon kings got a bunch of stones and bamboo baskets from somewhere. At that time, everyone was still squatting in the corner, wondering what they were going to do. But 3 days later, which was last night, their end was here. Every one of them had to carry a 30-gene load and run 3 laps around Shao Mountain. If you didn't finish running, you wouldn't be given food. That was how willful and awesome you were. If you dared to object, you would die. At this time, the sun in the sky was scorching hot. Although they had been running all morning, they didn't dare to complain at all. Because the emperor was coming to inspect today. If the emperor were to see them being so lazy, the 3 demon kings might really break their legs. However, it had already been more than 2 hours. They had been running for more than 2 hours. The emperor wasn't here yet. Everyone was in despair. They were terrified. They thought the 3 demon kings at the gate were targeting them. In contrast to the soldiers' fear, Yu Qigong and the other 2 looked at the gate and couldn't help but be puzzled. Yu Qigong looked at Qin Qiong suspiciously and asked, Shu Bao, are you sure the emperor said he would come today? Cheng Yaojin stroked his beard and looked at White Deer College in the shadows of Shao Mountain. Did he go to Feng Zi's place? It should be, right? Otherwise, His Majesty would have arrived long ago. The 3 of them looked in the direction of Shao Mountain and then looked behind them at the soldiers who were climbing, running, and jumping on various horizontal bars, rope ladders, or under nets. They could not help but sigh. Feng Zi, you really have a way. Otherwise, I don't know how useless these bastards would be now. Cheng Yaojin laughed and then roared, It's only been 2 hours, you can't take it anymore? Are you all cowards? Rise for me, Lao Tzu. If anyone dares to slack off, regardless of whether His Majesty comes or not, Lao Tzu will record your every move in detail. When the time comes, we'll let your Lao Tzu see what kind of playthings you are. Everyone who was already exhausted almost fainted when they heard this. Damn it. What kind of people were they? Do you have to tell your family about such a small matter? How are we supposed to live? Although everyone was very tired, they could not help but get angry when they heard that everything would be recorded. They gritted their teeth and worked hard again. Cheng Yaojin and the other two looked into the distance and then looked at the sun in the sky. He smacked his lips and said, I just heard that Zhang Feng is stirring up trouble on the mountain again. I don't know what those bastards are doing. I don't know what happened to the 300,000 pigs yesterday. Until now, no one has come to say anything, Dad. Just as the three of them were muttering, Cheng Chumo rode his mule and galloped over from afar. The three of them immediately looked over when they heard the word, Dad. Cheng Yaojin glared at him. There is no father and son in the army. This is the rule. Did you King feed a dog? Carry 60 jin of weight for Lao Tzu and run 3 laps around Shao Mountain. He is not allowed to come back until he finishes. Cheng Chumo, who was on the back of the mule, heard this. His eyes widened and he fell off the back of the mule. His expression changed greatly as he shouted, Dad? General Cheng, I am here to deliver food to the 3 of you under the orders of Master. Cheng Yaojin heard this and snorted. When Cheng Chumo came to his side, he asked, Deliver food to the door? Didn't the Crown Prince bring 300,000 pigs up the mountain in the past? You should all know about this. Cheng Chumo grinned and smiled foolishly. At the same time, he hurriedly unloaded the 2 wooden buckets on the back of the mule and opened the lids in front of the 3 of them. Instantly, a strong smell of meat wafted out, causing the 3 of them to stare so hard that their eyes almost popped out. Cheng Yaojin did not even care about his son. He grabbed a piece of meat and started chewing. How could Yu Qigong and the other 2 hold back? When they saw the gravy at the corner of Cheng Yaojin's mouth, they also picked up a piece of meat and started chewing. It was as if Cheng Chumo had long forgotten that he was good at the army. When the 3 of them were eating happily, Cheng Yaojin wiped his mouth and shouted angrily again, Damn it, it's a pity that we can't drink alcohol in the army. Otherwise, if we could pair it with Feng Zi's wine, that would be truly enjoyable. Alright, why don't we go up the mountain tomorrow to find him? Yu Qigong finished a pig's ear and did not even bother wiping his mouth. He grabbed a piece of pig's liver and took a bite. As if he felt that the taste was not good enough, he spat it out and picked up another pig's ear. The 3 of them walked into the military camp as they ate. At this time, Yu Qigong asked, Kid, did you see His Majesty on the way? Oh. I saw him. He went back and swindled Feng Zi's secret winemaking recipe from the mountain and ran away. Chapter 729. Prince Zhenla Shiva is here. Prince Zhenla Shiva is here. The moment Shao Gizi and the guards at the entrance of the political announcement hall, the officials in the court finally reacted. They couldn't help but be shocked. Prince Zhenla is here? And it's actually a prince? Could it be that His Majesty insisted on fighting? Amidst the confusion of the crowd, a handsome youth wearing a strange green robe with golden edges slowly walked into the political announcement hall. Behind him were 2 old men with white beards. Each of them held a yellow rosewood tray that was tightly covered by a red cloth. No one knew what was hidden inside. However, from the bulging part, everyone could faintly feel that this thing was extraordinary. As soon as Prince Zhenla entered the political announcement hall with 2 people, he respectfully put his right hand on his chest and saluted. Prince Zhenla Shiva is here to greet His Majesty the Tang Emperors. Li Shimin waved his sleeve. Rise? While speaking, Shiva raised his head, took a tray from an old man behind him and said, This is a letter of credence written by my father to His Majesty the Tang Emperors. I hope His Majesty the Tang Emperors can take a look. Then, Shao Gizi walked down the hall, checked the letter, and carefully presented it to Li Shimin. This was the second letter Prince Junla sent to him. Yesterday, he received a letter from an envoy, but when he returned to the palace, he learned that Prince Junla had come. It seemed that Junla was really at the end of his rope. Otherwise, he wouldn't have sent so many envoys this time and even let Prince Junla come in person. Prince Junla was equivalent to the crown prince, so it was conceivable that the crown prince would come in person. Sure enough, after Li Shimin opened the letter of credence, the contents of the letter had changed from the previous request to a plea. Li Shimin took a deep breath and asked without changing his expression, "I already know about this matter, but you also know the current situation of the Tang dynasty. Therefore, I have to think about it carefully before I can restore you." Upon hearing this, Shiwa bowed and said, "Many thanks for your Majesty's benevolence and kindness. This humble one came here with the intention of my imperial father. My imperial father said that as long as your Majesty sends out troops, I will do my best to gather enough military supplies for the Tang dynasty. Not only that, I will also deduct 30% of the profits from the past trade. In the future, I, Junla, am also willing to sign a permanent vassal state agreement with the Tang dynasty and pay tribute every year." Hearing this, only then did everyone in the court become aghast. Permanent vassal state? Deducting 30% of the profits from all the past trade to the Tang dynasty? The poisonous salt was originally given to the Tang dynasty for free. In exchange, the Tang dynasty only needed to give them 10 caddies of poisonous salt. But in addition, there were other things, such as seafood, spices, fruits, and so on, which had a lot to do with. Since the establishment of trade and commerce with Junla, many people in the imperial court had participated in it. Some people even made a lot of money because of it. Although everyone was worried before, this business only affected the current situation. It would recover one day. But it was different now. If the emperor agreed to help Junla, and according to the emperor's current intention, it seemed that he had long wanted to help Junla, once he sent out troops, then their interests would be maximized. Li Shimin also fell silent at this time. He slowly swept his gaze across the faces of the ministers in the court before slowly saying, "We know what you have said. However, you also know the current situation. If we blindly send out troops, what kind of consequences will there be? Therefore, we will give you an answer within 3 days." While speaking, Li Shimin waved his hand and said, "Send an order to all the government troops in South Jiandao, Lingnan, to be ready." Court dismissed. In Li Shimin's indifferent voice, everyone had to suppress the doubts in their hearts and respectfully send Li Shimin off. After everyone left, Shiva glanced at the direction where Li Shimin left, and then winked at the two people behind him. He hurriedly left the political announcement hall and went to the Honglu temple. In addition to this matter, he came to the Tang dynasty this time for another matter. That was to visit Zhang Feng. When he was in Junla, he heard that Zhang Feng seemed to have opened an academy in the Tang dynasty to recruit talents from all over the world. The purpose of his visit this time was to find Zhang Feng. As for this matter, he was confident that as long as the Tang emperors were not fools, they would definitely send out troops. And he had shown his sincerity. He did not believe that the people of the Tang dynasty would not agree. As soon as he left the political announcement hall, Shiva told the two people behind him, "You two go back to the Honglu temple first. I'll go out for a while." An elder of the two asked worriedly, "Prince, it's not too late to go after you have a definite answer. After all, this is a big deal." Shiva was unmoved. He just used his eyes to signal the ministers who had just left the political announcement hall and said, "Look at their faces and think about what His Majesty the Tang emperors just said. You'll understand." While speaking, Shiva hurriedly followed the carriage that was picking up the ministers and disappeared from the sight of the two envoys. Chapter 730. In the Imperial Study. Wei Jing, Fang Xianling, Du Ruhui, Qing Yaojin, Yu Qigong, and the others had been waiting here for a long time. After a while, Li Shimin hurried over. After seeing them, Li Shimin directly asked, "You all heard what Prince Junla said just now, right? Do you think we should send the troops or not?" Yu Qigong hurriedly cupped his fists and said, "Your Majesty, we must send the troops. If we don't, how will the countries that have submitted to the Tang dynasty see us? How will the other countries treat us?" The salt we use now is basically used by all the people. If we don't send the troops, then the consequences, and the current situation is not a problem of whether to send the troops or not. The biggest problem is the Tang dynasty's attitude towards this matter. Yu Qigong, Qing Yaojin, and Qin Qiong spoke one after another. In any case, what they meant was that they must send the troops, and they had no choice but to send the troops. And when the three of them finished speaking, Fang Xianling said, "The current situation is that the Tang dynasty can only send 50,000 troops, and 50,000? That's enough." Yu Qigong waved his hand and interrupted Fang Xianling. He looked at Li Shimin and said, "Your Majesty, give me 50,000. If Zhenla is really in charge of the provisions this time, then this old general has a way to delay the war for 10 days. These 10 days are enough for this old general to send the news to the palace. At that time, Your Majesty will mobilize the troops of the various prefectures to help. This old general will definitely be able to kill all 300,000 Indian soldiers." This was the source of Yu Qigong's confidence. Although the other side had 300,000 people. But who was he? He had fought countless battles, big and small. If he could meet that brat before he left, he could learn a thing or two about military tactics from him. It would be best if he could get some impenetrable shields and armor, or a spear that could pierce through anything. Then, he would have the guts to lead these 50,000 men to clash with the Indian army. The crux of the matter was Zhang Feng. Li Shimin was thinking the same thing. After all, at this time, he also knew the seriousness of the matter. Once he broke his promise, let alone Zhenla, the Tang dynasty would lose the credibility of the entire business world. At that time, who would dare to do business with them? Therefore, the number of troops sent out at this time must not be small. Fang Xianling and Du Ruhui wanted to say something, but in the end, they swallowed their words. At this moment, they were also aware of the situation. Li Shimin saw that no one was speaking. He said, "Then, gather all the generals. I want to see your military plans before tonight." As he spoke, Li Shimin's expression became slightly better, and he left. "Farewell, Your Majesty." After they sent off Li Shimin, Du Ruhui stopped Yu Qigong and said, "General Yuqi, this time the army is of great importance. Even if the Tang dynasty added the government soldiers, how many people can we send out?" Yu Qigong rolled his eyes and said, "What do you mean, General Du?" "What do I mean? Old man, let me ask you. You should know that this matter with Zhenla is probably a test by Tubo and India against the Tang dynasty. Are you so sure that 50,000 people can fight against 300,000 soldiers? What if they fail? Won't the Tang dynasty lose face?" Yu Qigong finally understood Du Ruhui's meaning. He glanced at the expressions of Fang Xianling, Wei Jing, and Zhang Sun. Yu Qigong and the other two laughed. Cheng Yaojin patted Zhang Sun Wuji on the shoulder and said, "Brother, don't worry about this. Do you still remember the invincible spear that Fengzi once said?" Wei Zheng and the others heard this and couldn't help but become angrier. "The civil engineering on Fengzi's mountain hasn't finished yet. Do you think Fengzi has the time to do that? Don't you think about it? Now that you've blindly told the emperor this, old man, let's see how you deal with this. Prime Minister Wei, don't worry." Qin Qiong cupped his hands and said, "Have you heard that little brother Zhang Feng has a military knowledge that is more magical than Sun Tzu's art of war?" Hearing this, the expressions of Zhang Sun Wuji and the others instantly froze. They did know about this, but they didn't know that this thing had become a stabilizing force for someone like Yu Qigong. What on earth was this so-called military knowledge? After the emperor and Qing Yaojin learned about this matter, they also knew about what happened in the Chang'an garrison camp. After all, some of their sons were there, and most importantly, their sons were basically by Zhang Feng's side. How could they not know? It was just that they always felt that what Zhang Feng said was just a battle of words. But they didn't expect Yu Qigong to say such things at this time. However, Yu Qigong didn't explain much. As soon as the three of them left the imperial city, they cupped their hands and said to Fang Xianling and the others, "I'll go back to the camp first. Please go and give the order to gather quickly. How about we discuss this matter in my mansion tonight?" Wei Zheng and the others couldn't say anything but cupped their hands. Chapter 731. The few of them hurriedly returned to their respective departments, from the military department, to the Ministry of Works, to the Ministry of Appointments, and so on. Then, a memorial that was stamped with seals appeared on Li Shimin's desk. Li Shimin took a look and stamped it. Then, an order to summon the army was sent out of the palace. It began to spread from Chang'an city. All the disciples of the military families or the families of military families had to report back to the military ministry after seeing this edict. And at this time, it was the same on Mount Shao. A large number of people received this edict, and the first to leave was the group of veterans of the Rejoice House. After excitedly saying goodbye to Zhang Feng, their eyes showed the long-lost excitement, but there was also a trace of loneliness. No one knew if the war would be gone forever. However, the pride of soldiers in their bones could only be comforted in their dreams at night. Most people thought they were a group of Rakshasa ghosts, but who knew that the battlefield was both love and hate for them? They loved it because they could only experience their value on the battlefield. In Chang'an city, except for Zhang Feng, who did not look at them with disdain. However, on the battlefield, they could express their dissatisfaction and anger as they wished. They hated it because this might be an eternal farewell, or they would linger on with the memories of their brothers that they could never forget. Zhang Feng looked at these people and was a little confused. He quietly pulled Li Qian aside and asked, "What's going on? Could it be that Tufan had attacked? Why did he suddenly issue an edict?" Li Qian patted Zhang Feng on the shoulder and sighed. "Brother, I guess I'll also go to the battlefield. Iron Bull and the others may also go. If only it was Tubo. This time, it's Jinla. Do you remember Prince Jinla who was fooled by you? This time he brought news. I heard that Jinla was invaded by 300,000 Indian troops, and most of the trade route you designed has now fallen into the hands of the Indians. So, you understand?" At this time, Chengchumo, Wei Shuyu, and the others arrived at Zhang Feng's door. They patted Zhang Feng's shoulder and said, "Brother, take care. You know our business in Jinla. We have to go up, so..." Zhang Feng was a little confused. "Didn't you say that only those who practice martial arts can go? Could it be that they've issued another recruitment order?" When they heard this, they were shocked. Li Qingqian hurriedly explained, "That's not it. We just said that we might go back. This time, it was Father who sent a message, telling us to go home and discuss countermeasures. Who knows, we might really have to part ways this time." Li Qingqian naturally wasn't going to the battlefield, but Cheng Chumo was different. Who was his father? Zhang Sunchong and Wei Shuyu had long wanted to go to the battlefield. Now that they had received the imperial edict, how could they sit still? He also wanted to go to the front line to take a look. Zhang Feng was dumbfounded by this sudden event. He was already used to these guys nagging at him for no reason, but suddenly so many people left, he felt so unnatural. "Can we not go?" Zhang Feng asked in a strange tone. Cheng Chumo glared at Zhang Feng. "We can't go just because you say so? Then what about the 300,000 Indian troops? The point is that Lao Tzu doesn't want to go either. Let's go." Cheng Chumo's eyes were red. He waved his hand and was about to leave. Li Qingqian, Du Go, and the others were fine. They said goodbye to Zhang Feng and prepared to leave. Zhang Feng was silent. But after a while, Zhang Feng looked at the door and shouted, "Come back! Come back! Lao Tzu has a way." The few of them stopped in their tracks. Zhang Feng could not help but wonder if these guys were really going to go down the mountain to join the army or do something else. But all of this was not important. Everything on the mountain, whether it was the food factory, the paper mill, or everything else on the mountain, if these bastards left, wouldn't he become a commander without an army? Zhang Feng looked at the strange expressions on the few of them and sighed. "Whether you are trying to trick me or not, Lao Tzu needs you now. So, I will think of a way for you. Are you sure you have a way?" Li Qingqian was a little hesitant. But there was also something strange. If Zhang Feng could really create an impenetrable shield in a short time, then it would really be solved. After thinking about it, Li Qingqian felt that it was impossible. Not to mention other things, how long would it take to make a shield out of stubborn iron? How many could he make in such a short time? But Li Qingqian still asked, "Feng Zi, do you have a way?" Zhang Feng was not in a hurry. Lying back on the recliner, he thought for a while and said, "Are you talking about the Indian invasion of Zhenla? I remember when Tubo's rebellion broke out, I heard your father talk about this. Did you not think that these two things might be the same thing?" In other words, the Indian invasion of Zhenla this time might have been premeditated by Tubo. Chapter 732. As Zhang Feng's voice fell, Li Qingxian's face turned pale. Li Qingxian's face alternated between green and white. The smile on his face was still frozen as he stared at Zhang Feng. After staring for a moment, his eyes seemed to be sore as he paced back and forth with his hands behind his back. This matter was too big. No one thought about Tubo's position. As for the disappearance of 100,000 Turkic elites, no one had expected it. However, now that Zhang Feng said this, Li Qingxian instantly thought of a terrifying possibility. The 100,000 Turkic people might not have disappeared, but they had secretly sneaked into India without anyone knowing. Although this was only a guess, it made Li Qingxian feel that there was a conspiracy behind it. Suddenly, Li Qingxian's eyes narrowed. "Fengzi, you mean to say that the missing 100,000 Turkic soldiers have already infiltrated India, and at the same time, instigated internal strife in Tibet, as well as the most genuine war with Latvia? Their intention is to divide the great Tang army?" Cheng Chumo and the others could not help but be shocked when they heard this. However, when Li Qingxian finished speaking and looked at Zhang Feng, he realized that Zhang Feng was staring at him with his mouth agape. "Li Qingxian, how did you know? Who told you this?" Zhang Feng really did not know about this matter. At this moment, Li Qingxian saw that he was going off topic and hurriedly said, "Well, when I went down the mountain last time, didn't I coincidentally meet Lord Zhang's son in my residence to discuss the trade route in Tubo with my father? At that time, Lord Zhang's son even praised you." "That's right, don't change the topic." When Zhang Feng heard this, he interrupted Li Qingxian's chatter. He frowned and fell into deep thought. The recliner under his butt was squeaking nonstop. After a while, Zhang Feng's toes touched the floor and the squeaking sound disappeared instantly. If the Turks really did dispatch 100,000 people, then this matter will be troublesome. In other words, the Turks are setting up a huge net, waiting for the soldiers of the Tang dynasty to fall into it. When Li Qingxian heard this, his expression involuntarily changed. "Do you mean that the current matter of Tubo and Zhenla is all a conspiracy of India against the Tang dynasty? If that's the case, his real intention is to invade the Tang dynasty?" Li Qingxian was a little flustered. The 100,000 soldiers who had set off for Tubo were completely unaware of this matter. Furthermore, based on the current situation, it was indeed a little interesting. The 100,000 Turkic soldiers seemed to have suddenly vanished. Combined with the current situation, there was a high chance that they had been hiding in India and Tubo for some time, and many of them had even entered Zhenla. Zhang Feng thought for a while and nodded. "That's right. Think about it. If you were given a sandbox of 100,000 people and there were hundreds of thousands of hungry people behind you, but the people next to you were well-fed and warm all day long, what would you do? Now, think about how you should use this sandbox. If your neighbor's power is as strong as yours, what would you do to feed the people behind you?" Li Qingxian was a little confused. However, Cheng Chumo instantly understood. After all, he had played with sandboxes a lot. "Fengzi, do you mean that this matter of Tubo and Zhenla is a Turkic action against the Tang dynasty? And their purpose is to take down the Tang dynasty? Or they want to use this method to fight against the Tang dynasty?" Zhang Feng nodded fiercely. At this time, he was thinking about the war between the Tang dynasty and the Turks next year, which was buried deep in his memory. In the 3rd year of Zhenguan, the war between the Tang dynasty and the Turks broke out. In this battle, Zhang Feng had thought that by nibbling away at the Turks would be able to achieve a complete victory. But now, it seemed that the Turks were no fools. They had also understood the great Tang's intentions. It seemed that India's sudden dispatch of troops was not without purpose. At this time, if they divided the troops, it seemed that they would fall into the Turks' trap. At that time, the garrison of Longyu Road and the defense of Tubo and other places would be lax. The Turks' army might catch them off guard. At that time, even if the people sent by the Tang dynasty wanted to come back to help, it would be too late. Li Chengqian and the others also understood at this time. Their faces were pale. However, after understanding all this, Zhang Feng was not in a hurry. Looking at Li Chengqian and the others, he said, "Don't be anxious about this matter. Soldiers will be deployed, but not to Zhenla. All of your properties will be saved. Now, you guys just have to obediently wear it for me. If you don't manage the academy well, you won't graduate. If you dare to run away, even if you beg me in the future, don't think of taking a step into the academy." In the face of Zhang Feng's threat, Li Chengqian automatically ignored it. Instead, he asked, "Do you mean that we won't save Zhenla? But now I heard that Prince Zhenla has come to the Tang dynasty." Zhang Feng's interest was piqued and he asked, "Does he have the same idea as Tufan? As long as the Tang dynasty sends troops, they will provide the provisions?" Hearing this, Li Chengqian, Cheng Chumo, Zhang Sun and the others looked at each other and then nodded. Zhang Feng waved his hand and said with a smile, "Then don't worry. As long as our emperor is not a fool, he will not send troops this time. And how can there be such a good thing in the world? Think about it. Who doesn't lack food? But why do they have to dig out so much military provisions from their teeth?" Chapter 733. Giddy up, giddy up, giddy up. On the mountain path of Shao Mountain, 5 fine horses were galloping. Along the way, when people saw these 5 fine horses, they wanted to scold them. However, when they saw the 5 masters riding on them, they immediately swallowed the words they wanted to scold in their hearts. But at the same time, they were also shocked. Although the 5 lords said that the Devil King's temperament had improved a lot after entering Shao Mountain, why was it still the same as before? Why were they so careless? "I heard that when it was getting dark yesterday, Zhenla's people came." After Li Chengqian and the other masters left, the crowd couldn't help whispering, "I heard that the White Harry from Tinju is going to attack Zhenla. What does that have to do with us?" "Hey! Who said it has nothing to do with us? Do you still want to eat salt? Where do you think the salt we eat now comes from? It's all made by our dean." And I also heard an interesting story. Before our dean came to Shao Mountain and made a fortune, didn't he have a tavern in Chang'an City? That day, Prince Zhenla and Princess Zhenla went to the tavern and met our dean. They were originally covered with jewels, but when they came out, do you know what they became? The crowd couldn't help but be interested. That person carried a basket of bricks on his back and said, "Those 2 idiots were tricked by our dean. Other than the clothes on their bodies, they don't have anything left." Hiss. Is that true? Yes. So what's the purpose of Zhenla's people coming this time? Are they sending treasures to our dean again? Who knows? But looking at the 5 masters' actions, maybe Zhenla is in trouble this time. Didn't you see that the edict was issued this morning? The group of veterans of the Enlu house went down the mountain like crazy. What? Is something really going to happen? Hiss. On the other side, Li Chengqian waved his horsewhip and rushed all the way to Chang'an City, and then rushed all the way to the Imperial City. It was hard not to attract attention along the way. Everyone couldn't help but think of Zhen Le's visit yesterday and today's edict. Chang'an City could not help but become jittery again. Li Chengqian and the others galloped, dismounting outside Taiji Palace. Holding the Crown Prince's token, they entered the imperial study under the shocked gazes of the Golden Guards. Li Shimin had been waiting for a long time. Seeing Li Chengqian and the others enter, he waved his hand, indicating Cheng Chumo and the others to leave. Only then did he ask, "Why are you so alarmed? Zhen only asked you to come back and participate in General Cheng and the others' discussion on this expedition to Zhenla. Why are you acting so exaggeratedly?" Li Chengqian was greatly alarmed when he heard this and hurriedly said, "Imperial Father, this son came precisely for this matter." Li Shimin raised his eyebrows. Did Feng Zi say something shocking again? Feng Zi said that this is a scheme of the Turks. When Li Shimin heard this, the indifferent expression on his face suddenly changed. He hurriedly asked, "Speak." When he learned that Li Chengqian and the others had broken into the imperial city, he had already. He thought of many possibilities, but he once again underestimated Zhang Feng's intelligence. He had actually spoken of the matter that Li Shimin was most worried about. Moreover, Zhang Feng had known nothing about the 100,000 Turks. There was a high chance that these brats had only revealed it in a moment of desperation. In a short moment, he was able to overlook the entire situation and hit the key points. This made Li Shimin somewhat believe Li Chengxian's words. Imperial Father, Feng Zi said that the Tubo incident, as well as the Zhenla and India incident, were all manipulated by the Turks. They had long been sure that our Tang dynasty would send troops to rescue Zhenla. Think about it, twice, it was them who provided the provisions. This is not normal. When Li Shimin heard this, he could not help but think of this strange matter that made his eyelids twitch. He had always felt that something was wrong. However, he could not figure out why he gave Yu Qigong and the others a day to discuss this matter. But now, Li Shimin was instantly enlightened by Li Chengxian's words. No wonder I have been thinking that since they have provisions for 100,000 people, they may not be unable to quell the rebellion. Why did they ask our Tang dynasty to send troops? It turns out that the Turks have long turned into Tubo rebels, and then used the old tricks of the Tang dynasty to promote Tubo. From the military and rumors, they mistakenly thought that this matter was serious. That's why they came to ask the Tang dynasty for help in such a panic. I understand now. Li Shimin slammed his fist on the table, instantly startling the 4 people waiting at the door. Li Shimin did not care so much. He hurriedly walked down from the dragon throne and asked, "Is what you said true?" But when he said this, Li Shimin did not feel that it was inappropriate. After all, this matter was too big, so big that Li Shimin felt that it was somewhat inconceivable. Li Chengxian nodded heavily. Your son has thought about this matter for a long time and also feels that it is very strange. Imperial Father, look. While speaking, Li Chengxian pointed at the map on the wall of the Imperial study and said, "This is the location of our Tang dynasty, and the 100,000 troops were gathered in Yuzhou. That is to say, Tuli Khan and Xieli are bound to meet. Otherwise, how could the 100,000 troops enter that good fox Xieli's territory so easily? Moreover, we were too ruthless to the Turks some time ago, and the Turks were in internal strife at that time. Do you still hear about the Turks' internal strife now?" Li Shimin's expression changed when he heard that. Li Chengxian continued, "First, Tubo broke out in internal strife, and then Tuli mobilized 100,000 elite troops. After that, Tubo asked for help, and then India suddenly sent troops. But these 100,000 elite Turks did not move at all. This." Chapter 734. At this moment, Li Chengxian didn't need to say anything. Li Shimin had long understood. If all of this wasn't a conspiracy of the Turks, then it would be strange. Li Shimin put his hands behind his back and walked in front of the map. After a long time, he asked, "Did Feng Zi say what we should do?" He said that Imperial Father was already mentally prepared, Li Chengxian said with a headache. Hearing this, Li Shimin's expression froze. Then he couldn't help but sigh. This Feng Zi really gave me a difficult problem. I almost had to send troops. Li Chengxian thought for a while and said, "However, Feng Zi seems to mean that the troops will be sent, but not to Zhenla." Not to Zhenla? Then where to? Li Shimin stared at the map. No matter how he looked at it, he couldn't figure it out. At present, the best way was to immediately send troops and then enter Zhenla to suppress India. Otherwise, when the troops arrived, everything would be over. But this kid said that he wouldn't go to Zhenla? Then, thinking of the request that Zhang Feng asked Li Chengxian to convey to Zhenla and Tubo, Li Shimin pointed at the map and asked in surprise, "Does Feng Zi mean that Zhenla's request for troops this time was completely due to the Turks and Indians deliberately leaking the news? What is their purpose? Could it be for, come, quickly summon Yu Qigong, Xing Yaojin, and Qin Qiong into the palace? Even if the horses run to death, I want to see them within a quarter of an hour." Cheng Chumo and the others who were kneeling outside the door heard this and felt their heads explode. They secretly looked back at the deep palace courtyard and couldn't help but be speechless. Did they really want the horses to run to death? Such a long distance, even if a horse galloped all the way, it would still take an hour. It seemed that the matter this time was really serious. Not long after Li Shimin's voice was transmitted, the news instantly reached the drum tower. After receiving the name, the drum tower heavily beat the drum 3 times. After hearing the 3 drum beats, the guards on the city wall of Zhuke Gate were as if they were facing a great enemy. An old general who understood the meaning of the drum beat personally took the hammer in the guard's hand and slammed it on a bronze gong the size of a millstone. In an instant, a piercing sound of the gong melodiously spread from the tower of Zhuke Gate. The sound of the gong was very subtle. After the first knock, the bell rang twice in a row, and then there was no more sound. After the second sound of the gong, a long and melodious sound of a horn sounded from the direction of the Chang'an military camp, that is, the gate of Chang'an city. This was a kind of temptation that no one else could understand, but only the generals in the army could. This was the command. It meant that the emperor had encountered an extremely serious matter. No matter what he was doing, he had to put it down and quickly enter the palace. This was the fastest way to transmit military intelligence in ancient times. It was a signal transmission method other than the smoke signal. At this time, in Yu Qigong's mansion, Qing Yaojin and the others were sitting around the sand table, arranging their troops. While they were arguing until their faces were red, they suddenly heard the faint sound of a gong. Yu Qigong and the others' faces changed greatly. They hurried out of the room and listened carefully. At this time, they heard the melodious sound of a horn coming from the gate of Chang'an city. They couldn't help but change their expressions. "Let's go! Enter the palace! Someone, prepare 3 horses!" Cheng Yaojin roared, picked up the broad axe on the shoulder of the guard in the corner, and quickly rushed out of Yu Qigong's mansion. After that, the 3 of them didn't even have time to put on their official robes. They each took their weapons and hurried to the imperial city. They didn't know what had happened to the emperor. This was a communication method that they were familiar with, but also strange to them. Only they, who had experienced the change of the Xuanwu Gate, knew the meaning of it. But now, the emperor was using it. It was obvious how serious the situation was at this time. How could the 3 of them dare to say anything? Along the way, the horse whips cracked loudly. But even so, it still took them almost an hour to arrive at the imperial study. As soon as they entered, Qing Yaojin was the first to raise his broad axe and say, "General Qing Yaojin greets the emperor." "Rise, rise. Let me ask you, have you discussed any countermeasures?" Hearing this, Qing Yaojin glanced at Yu Qigong and said, "Your Majesty, I feel that there is something wrong with this matter." But old man Yu Qi said that he wants to change the route to enter Jinla from Tubo. "Let me ask you, what do you think is wrong?" Li Shimin impatiently interrupted Qing Yaojin, looked at the 3 of them again and asked, "I want to know, what do you think is wrong?" Hearing this, Qing Yaojin then said, "It's the food problem of Tubo and Jinla. No matter if it's 50,000 or 100,000 people, according to our informants, currently India and Tubo are all affected by the food shortage, especially Tubo and the Turks. Although Jinla has been trading with us before, it can only be regarded as using the power of the whole country to stockpile food for 100,000 people. So, I feel that there is something wrong with this matter. It's completely unnecessary. Especially Tubo. Does it need to go through so much trouble to quell internal strife?" After Qing Yaojin finished speaking, Li Shimin's expression became more dignified, and he pointed at Yu Qigong and Yu Qigong. The 2 of them said basically the same thing as Qing Yaojin. Li Shimin's heart couldn't help but thump. He said, "You should have heard about the crown prince coming down the mountain just now, right? The news he brought was that Fengzi said that this was a conspiracy of the Turks, and he suspected that old thief Tuli's 100,000 elites had already entered Tubo and India. But I feel that since Tuli has made a move, it's impossible for Xieli to not make a move." Hearing this, Qing Yaojin and the other 2's expressions changed greatly. Li Shimin continued, "So, I feel that it's very likely that Xieli has also mobilized at least 100,000 troops." Chapter 735. What? Xieli also made a move? Hearing this, Yu Qigong and the other 2's expressions changed greatly. Yu Qigong hurriedly asked, "Your Majesty, do you mean that the Indian army this time is likely to have gathered Xieli Tuli's elites and mixed in with the Indian army? Do they mean the hinterland of the Tang dynasty?" Li Shimin narrowed his eyes and pointed at the map. "Do you think that if all the available people of the Tang dynasty go to Tubo and Jinla, and the Turkic elites descend from the sky from anywhere in this open space? Who in the Tang dynasty can stop them? Li Shimin pointed at Longyu Road, Guanyi Road, and Jianan Road, which was close to Tubo. Hearing this, Yu Qigong and the other two's eyes showed a trace of shock. If the emperor hadn't pointed it out, then who would have thought of this? If all the available troops went to Tubo and India, it would inevitably cause an internal emptiness. Once the Turkic people appeared, it would be too late even if they wanted to go back to help. Yu Qigong and the other two couldn't help but be angry. If the kid on the mountain hadn't discovered it in time, they might have fallen into the trap by now. Yu Qigong didn't know what to do at this time. He asked, "Then should we send the troops now?" Li Shimin looked at the map in silence. "Yuqi, let me ask you three. Now that you know the situation, do you still want to send the troops?" This time, Yu Qigong and the other two were stumped. If they went, what would happen to the Tang dynasty? If they didn't go, wouldn't they be subjected to public opinion? By then, wouldn't those countries dependent on the Tang dynasty be in chaos? This was really a dilemma. Seeing that the three didn't speak, Li Shimin couldn't help but feel disappointed. But thinking about it, even he didn't dare to make a conclusion on this matter so easily. It could only be said that the person who came up with this idea had calculated the situation of the Tang dynasty to the smallest detail. Send the troops. This would give them a chance to head south. If they did not send troops, the Tang dynasty would also be in danger due to public opinion. This was simply vicious to the extreme. Forget it. You guys go back and arrange the route first. Do what you should do as usual. Let me think about it first. The three of them were shocked. He hurriedly asked, "Your Majesty, you, get out." Li Shimin coldly shouted. Only then did the three of them leave the imperial study. Li Chengqian also wanted to leave, but Li Shimin didn't say anything, and he didn't dare. He could only stand there quietly. Li Shimin quietly looked at the map, and Li Chengqian also unconsciously looked at the map. Thinking back to what Zhang Feng had just said, he couldn't help but say, "Father, Fengzi just told us something." "Speak." Fengzi said that if we were given a sandbox and a setting, how would we be able to arrange a perfect formation on the sandbox when the people who set us up are running out of food and the neighboring country is rich in resources? Li Shimin was shocked when he heard this. He hurriedly waved his hand and came to the study on the right side of the imperial study with Li Chengqian. In the corner of the study, there was a sandbox covered with red gauze, which had long been covered with dust. Li Shimin tore off the gauze. It was a huge sandbox of the Tang dynasty, the surrounding countries, Sherwei, Goguryeo, and other countries. Li Shimin bent over, squinted his eyes, and used a bamboo stick to make some gestures. After a long time, he pointed at the tubo. His face was terrifyingly gloomy. He sighed and said, "Qian, how long do you think it will take to make the invincible spear that Fengzi mentioned?" This time, Li Chengqian asked the question. Li Chengqian thought for a moment before saying, "Father, I think that Fengzi might be able to make it in 10 days. However, if he wants to equip the entire army, it will take at least a month. At the very least, this is if Fengzi goes all out and cooperates with all the top blacksmiths of the Tang Empire. That might be possible. A month? 10 days? It's too late." Li Shimin slammed his fist on the sandbox. "Let's go to the mountain. I want to ask Fengzi in person." After Li Shimin finished speaking, he hurriedly walked away with large strides. Li Chengqian stared blankly for a moment before hurriedly following. As soon as they left the imperial study, Chengchumo and the others, whose legs were numb from waiting, were about to salute Li Shimin, but he ignored them and left in a hurry. Looking at Li Shimin's back, they were dumbfounded. They were just ignored by Yu Qigong and the others, and now they were ignored by the emperor. They seriously wondered if they had provoked someone. Did it have to be like this? Seeing Li Chengqian come out, they grabbed him and asked, "Chengqian, what's going on? We just heard that the emperor seemed to be angry." Li Chengqian flicked his sleeves and glared at them, but he didn't say anything. He hurriedly said, "Quickly follow the emperor to the mountain. Don't ask too much. I'll tell you later." Hearing this, they were even more dumbfounded. But seeing the emperor and Li Chengqian running away in a hurry, they could only look at each other and then hurriedly follow. Chapter 736. At this time, Zhang Feng was also a little restless. Just now, Li Qingqian and the others went down the mountain after all. After they left, Zhang Feng had a rare moment of peace and quiet. He recalled all the things in his memory about Chang'an 3 years ago. But the more he thought about it, the more he found that there must be a master in the Tujue. Otherwise, who could be so clear about every move of the Tang dynasty? And he even figured out the emperor's mind so accurately? Send troops? That was exactly what they wanted. If they didn't send troops, then the public opinion offensive that Zhang Feng had played a long time ago would put the Tang dynasty in a disadvantageous position. At that time, the Tujue would still have to go down south. It seemed that in the 3rd year of Zhengguan, which was next year, the historical Li Shimin was also driven to desperation. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been in such a hurry to start the war. It should be noted that although he was there now, so the Tang dynasty avoided the plague of locusts next year, he didn't know whether it was the butterfly effect or something else. This time, it seemed that because of his arrival, it was also a kind of reflection of the chain reaction caused by him. After all, major historical events were inevitable. Although Zhang Feng could change and promote the perfect ending of this event, he still couldn't stop it from happening. This made Zhang Feng a little doubt whether he had traveled to the real torrent of history or to a parallel world. However, Zhang Feng still believed that it was because of his arrival that caused a series of butterfly effects. Otherwise, how could this be explained? But this was all Zhang Feng's guess. But when he thought of these things, Zhang Feng couldn't help but have a headache again. Calculating the time, it had already been 7 months. This damn system, when would it be activated? *CK. Zhang Feng couldn't help but make an international gesture to the window. But at this moment, there was a sudden explosion outside the door. Zhang Feng was so scared that he trembled, thinking that he had suffered retribution. As soon as he came back to his senses, Zhang Feng faintly heard someone knocking on the door. Only then did Zhang Feng heave a deep sigh of relief. As soon as he opened the door, Zhang Feng saw Li Shimin's eunuch, Xiao Gizi, bending over and quietly staring at him. Ding! Zhang Feng almost slapped him. Zhang Feng was scared of Xiao Gizi from the bottom of his heart. If he wasn't Li Shimin's personal attendant, Zhang Feng would have urged Li Shimin to replace him. But at this time, Zhang Feng couldn't care so much. He glanced at Li Shimin's solemn face and couldn't help but be stunned. Lao Li, what's wrong with you? Hurry up, where do you want to sit? As Zhang Feng greeted Li Shimin, he glanced behind Li Shimin and found that Li Qingqian and the others had also come back timidly. But they didn't enter the door. They just stood at the door, not knowing what they wanted to do. Zhang Feng saw that he couldn't call them, so he was too lazy to call them. He directly closed the door and said, "There's no good wine today. We've drunk all the wine." Li Shimin smiled bitterly. "How can I still be in the mood to drink? Now you know that India is going to war with Zhenla. Basically, all my industries are either in Longyu Road, Guanyi Road, and Jianan Road. These are all passing through Zhenla and are close to Tubo's trade routes. If it's really like what you said, then once the war starts, won't my industries be finished? Do you think I still have the mood to do these things?" Li Shimin had a splitting headache. When he thought of the newly restored trade of the Tang dynasty and the thriving national conditions, he instantly became worried. When Zhang Feng saw Li Shimin like this, he thought that he was going to suffer a big loss this time. He hurriedly comforted him, "Old brother, since you're here, it means that your son told you what I said. Didn't you say that it's very likely that the emperor won't send troops? What if he doesn't send troops?" Li Shimin hurriedly asked. Zhang Feng patted Li Shimin's shoulder, then reclined comfortably on the recliner and said, "Who told you that the emperor won't send troops? I just said that he won't send troops to Zhenla. And this time, I guess the emperor will not only send troops, but also establish his power and deter the Turks." When Li Shimin heard this, he couldn't help but be stunned. He didn't think of this. When Zhang Feng said this to establish his power, Li Shimin immediately became interested. He couldn't help but ask, "Tell me, how is the emperor going to establish his power? And what's going on with this dispatch of troops? Why are you getting more and more confused?" "Of course you don't understand." Zhang Feng rolled his eyes. "If you understood, you wouldn't be a businessman. What is this?" This is something the emperor is worried about. Why do you care so much? This is a national affair. It's better if you don't understand. Li Shimin's face darkened. How could he say this? He could only ask, isn't this because you're worried about my industry? Why don't you tell me how you're going to do it? By the way, I have some industries under my name, especially the poisonous salt mine in Zhenla, which seems to be half of your industry. Are you going to watch all your industries disappear? Zhang Feng was stunned. My industries? Chapter 737. Zhang Feng was a little dumbfounded. He only remembered that he had given this salt-making technique to Lao Li just to show off. But how could he have known that this thing could make money? But then Zhang Feng's eyes couldn't help but burn. He rubbed his hands and asked, well, Lao Li, tell me, how much did I make from this thing? You also know that my academy has just started, and I need money for everything. I'm worried about this. You're really my god of wealth. Li Shimin instantly felt as if there was a fly stuck in his throat. It was suffocating. However, he really didn't care about this little bit of money. However, this kid had already forgotten about this matter completely. In an instant, Li Shimin had an impulse to vomit blood. Zhenla's poisonous salt was basically given to the Tang dynasty. 10 carriages of poisonous salt in exchange for 1 carriage of salt, and it was the coarse salt that was produced in the first process. Even so, the people of Zhenla thought that they had gotten a big bargain, not to mention that these coarse salt were basically sold in large quantities to the Turkic Tubo and other countries at the price of 10 copper coins per kilogram. As for the fine salt in the Tang dynasty, it was basically 1 copper coin per kilogram. Although it was cheap, it was basically used by everyone except those who lived deep in the mountains and forests. Millions of people. This was an astronomical figure. Li Shimin took a deep breath and looked up at Zhang Feng's face. He shook his head and found it funny. When did you become so vulgar? Vulgar? Don't you know that you don't know the cost of firewood and rice if you don't manage the household? Now I'm just sitting there and eating. If you don't think of a way, what can you do? Ignoring Zhang Feng's incessant retort, Li Shimin said, you should be able to calculate the price of this thing. After all, you were the one who set the price of this thing in the first place. There are hundreds of large and small salt-making workshops in the various prefectures of Jianan Circuit, and that's not counting the ones set up by the government. Every day, each workshop can produce about 500 kilograms of fine salt and about 3,000 kilograms of export coarse salt. The export coarse salt is 10 copper coins, and the domestic fine salt is 1 copper coin. If the fine salt is exported, the price will be about 1 copper coin. Do you have an idea now? So much. When Zhang Feng heard this, his eyes almost popped out. He spread out his hands and said, then give me some money first. I'm so poor that I don't even have enough money to eat. You still know how to ask for money? Now these workshops and your source of income are all cut off. Even if I give you some money now, what will you do in the future? Don't just be a shopkeeper. When Zhang Feng heard this, he came out of his beautiful fantasy of waiting to receive money. Although this thing was just thrown to Li Shimin casually at the beginning, he didn't expect that this thing could become popular in the Tang dynasty in such a short time. Now when he heard it, Zhang Feng felt like he was in Tesco. However, Lao Li still had a conscience and gave him some shares, but at this time Zhang Feng thought for a while, then stood up and walked around the room twice before saying, Lao Li, actually, what do you think about the matter of Zhenla this time? Li Shimin rolled his eyes. He chose to ignore it. If he knew the way, would he come here? Did he have nothing to do? Do you think I would come to you if I knew the way? Li Shimin couldn't help complaining in the end. Zhang Feng touched his nose, coughed, and said, actually, you just need to stay calm about this matter. His Majesty already has a plan. Plan? I just heard from Qian, or that you said His Majesty is not going to send troops to Zhenla? Li Shimin saw that he finally got to the main topic, so he hurriedly asked. Zhang Feng shook his finger. No, it's not that His Majesty is not going to send troops. His Majesty should be able to understand the current situation. Of course, you definitely can't understand it. Then tell me about it so that I can be mentally prepared. You also know that a large number of my goods are now detained in Tubo and other countries. Once the war starts, not only will we lose Zhenla, this fat piece of meat, but we may also lose all our trade routes. Aren't you worried at all? Moreover, the current situation is not a problem of whether to send troops or not, but what if we are attacked from both sides once we send troops? Li Shimin finished what he wanted to say in one breath. This time, he really didn't have any time to brag and chat with Zhang Feng. Now, he didn't know how many people the Tujue had sent out, nor did he know what conspiracy was behind this matter. As the emperor, how could he not be worried? This time, if there was another White Horse alliance, Li Shimin would definitely go crazy. Moreover, he also knew that if the Tujue really came to the south this time, it wouldn't be to scare people. Seeing this, Zhang Feng didn't want to joke anymore. He knew that Lao Li was really worried about the current situation. Zhang Feng didn't even think about it. He dipped the cup in water and wrote 4 big words on the table. Besiege Wei to rescue Zhao. When Li Shimin saw these words, he was shocked. He couldn't help but frown. You mean? Chapter 738. Li Shimin knew the story of besieging Wei to rescue Zhao. After all, he had come from a military background, so he knew the various military operations like the back of his hand. But now that Zhang Feng was talking about besieging Wei to rescue Zhao, Li Shimin couldn't understand. He hurriedly asked, Feng Zi, by besieging Wei to rescue Zhao, you mean that His Majesty wants to send troops to deal with the Turks? Who told you that? If there's nothing wrong with His Majesty's head, no human would say such a thing. I said that you weren't cut out for this, but you didn't believe me and insisted on asking. Li Shimin was once more looked down upon by Zhang Feng. But none of this was important. Li Shimin didn't get angry, continuing to ask, then why don't you tell me, should we send troops or not? Where should we send them, and what do you mean by besieging Wei to rescue Zhao? Li Shimin's mind was in a mess. How could he think of so many things? Zhang Feng pursed his lips and looked at the panicked Li Shimin like he was looking at a country bumpkin, slowly shaking his head. If I say that you don't understand, then you really don't understand. Come, I'll explain it to you in detail. It can also be considered as a science lesson for you. Otherwise, if you walk out like this, I'll lose face. As he spoke, Zhang Feng took out a piece of straw paper, a brush, ink, paper, and an inkstone, as well as a thin bamboo stick. On the paper, he roughly sketched out the Tang dynasty and the surrounding terrain. Then he pointed at the intersection of Tubo, India, and Zhenla. Look, this is the intersection of the 3 kingdoms. Look here. As he spoke, Zhang Feng used the bamboo stick to point at the Anxi Protectorate and then wrote the words Jiuzi City. Li Shimin instantly understood the approximate location of this map from the circles of various sizes. Then, Zhang Feng drew a long dotted line from the vicinity of Jiuzi City to Longyu Circuit and said, if our soldiers set out from Guanyi Circuit and work with all the soldiers of Longyu Circuit to set up defenses along the way, then enter Jiuzi City from a diagonal line, cross Tubo, and work with a portion of the Tang dynasty soldiers in Tubo to directly attack India, wouldn't this instantly solve Zhenla's dilemma? Li Shimin was dumbfounded. His eyes stared straight at the map, unable to speak for a long time. He instantly understood what Zhang Feng meant by besieging Wei to rescue Zhao, but what was the use? Fengzi, I heard that old bastard Tuli has already arranged 100,000 elites from Yuzhou. Didn't you say so yourself? It's very likely that these 100,000 people have already entered Tubo and India. The war between the 2 countries is also very likely a plot related to these Turkic elites. If you do this, won't you be attacked from the front and the back? You must know that the number of soldiers that the Tang dynasty can mobilize, including the soldiers of the various prefectures, is at most 200,000. If these people are all trapped, won't our Tang dynasty completely open the western gate to the Turks? Moreover, you have to understand that Tuli and Xieli have always been at odds. What does it mean that Tuli's 100,000 elites can enter Xieli's territory mean? This shows that Tuli and Xieli must have reached some kind of consensus. Therefore, I think this time the Tujue have dispatched more than 100,000 men, most likely 200,000. It is also possible that the 300,000 men from India are basically Tujue people. Do you believe me? Li Shimin said everything that he wanted to say in one go. Zhang Feng looked at Li Shimin in surprise. Not bad, Lao Li. I didn't expect you to have made some progress. Your guess is correct. Although Tuli and Xieli are uncle and nephew, they have long been like fire and water. Moreover, the disaster and famine this time have already caused a large scale of friction. Tuli's people being able to enter the Western Turks safely is a very big problem. But until now, there has been no news. What does that mean? There's a trick in this. The reason why I said to besiege Wei to rescue Zhao, as well as using Chiotzi City as the starting point, is actually based on His Majesty's usual strategy. Chiotzi City is an important stronghold. It can reach the Tujue and penetrate deep into Tubo's hinterland. If you were given 100,000 men, I think that even if you brought 100,000 men and did nothing but parade around Tubo, it would still make India and the Tujue nervous. But what's the use of this? We are now thinking of how to resolve the situation in Jinla. Li Shimin spread out his hands. Zhang Feng patted Li Shimin's shoulder and said, "Don't be anxious. Let me finish." Li Shimin's face darkened. Get to the point. Okay. Actually, if you bring 100,000 people from Chiotzi into Tubo, your goal is to attract the attention of the Turks in India, and then kill your way into India in a high-profile manner. What do you think will happen if your 100,000 people enter India? Even if India announces that 300,000 people are stationed in Jinla, that means that their defense will be focused on the border with Jinla. As for the border between Tubo and the Turks, there will be a gap in their defense. Once they know about this, do you think they will continue to attack Jinla? Or go back to reinforce? Li Shimin stared at the simple map drawn by Zhang Feng. After thinking carefully, he instantly understood. This is what you meant by attacking Wei to rescue Zhao? Chapter 739. It was only natural that Li Shimin would be so shocked. Li Shimin had read more books on the art of war than anyone else. After all, his title as the King of Qin had not come out of thin air. It had been won through battle after battle. But today, Zhang Feng's unprecedented strategy left Li Shimin rather shocked. He was very clear about the military story of besieging Wei to rescue Zhao. However, at this moment, Zhang Feng had given him a whole new level of understanding. Li Shimin couldn't help but wonder if all the books on the art of war he had studied were fake. Otherwise, how could he not understand something so simple that could be solved with a different way of thinking? Fengzi, just what are you thinking? Why can't I think of such a simple thing? But there's one thing I still don't understand. You've said so much, but what if the Turks haven't mobilized all their forces? Or perhaps they've already predicted Chiotzi City. After all, the Turks are said to have an army of 1 million. 1 million? And an army? Zhang Feng faintly smiled. Have you forgotten what you did to the Turks? You've already bought all their horses. Do you think they can still muster an army of 1 million? It's already a miracle that they can muster 300,000 horsemen, and you still expect them to have 1 million? The 1 million they said was just a bluff. They can't even muster 500,000. Moreover, the Turks are probably probing. If the Tang dynasty really falls for their trap, then the Tang dynasty will be in danger. Thus, the Turks are gambling. Either they win and drink wine in Chang'an, or they lose and hide in the steppe. Do you understand now? But if we penetrate through Chiotzi City, we'll be cutting off this group of people's connection with the Turks. Moreover, if we spread out all the spies we've planted along the way and work with the Tibetan army, even if they have 200,000 soldiers, do you think they'll be a match for us in a long-distance raid? Let's talk about something else. The Turks are good at fighting on the plains, but the soldiers of the Tang dynasty are suited to all kinds of environments. The current environment is more favorable for the soldiers of the Tang dynasty. So, what do you think will happen if we send our troops? In Li Shimin's eyes, there was only deep shock left. Besieging Wei to rescue Zhao. This was not besieging Wei to rescue Zhao. This was killing two birds with one stone. Not only could they solve Jinla's predicament and force the Indians to return, but they would also be able to encircle and annihilate the Turks in Chiotzi City. This, Li Shimin murmured. Fengzi, are you talking about the military science you talked about before? Zhang Feng took a sip of tea and said lightly, yes, this is only a small part of military science. It's also called military analysis. Military analysis? A small part? This is called a small part? Li Shimin was speechless. But he still asked, then what is this tactic called? What is it called? Zhang Feng thought for a while and said, it's called deep battle. This kind of thing was basically known to anyone who had watched TV. However, the people of this era did not know anything about tactics, let alone TV. They only knew how to dive headfirst into it. At most, they would know how to arrange the troops. Who could understand this kind of thing? But what was this? This was something that the martyrs had summed up in war after war. But for Li Shimin, this was something incredible. How could he understand these things? He could not help but ask, what is deep battle? Zhang Feng was speechless. Well, it's hard to explain in a few words. But don't worry. As long as the emperor is not stupid, your property will be saved this time. So, don't worry, don't panic. Just wait calmly. Seeing that Zhang Feng was unwilling to talk about it, a hint of disappointment flashed through Li Shimin's eyes. However, he rolled his eyes and said, although what you said does make sense, and perhaps His Majesty also arranged it this way, after all, I have too many people under my command. In addition to the complexity of this war, it is inevitable that some stray soldiers will covet our things, so, what are you going to say? Zhang Feng's ears instantly pricked up. He was still brooding about the wine last time. At this time, Li Shimin's words instantly made Zhang Feng extremely vigilant. Don't expect to get a penny from me. Let me tell you, I have nothing but a set of clothes now. I've put them all on for you. If you want anything, don't say it. You won't get it even if you say it. Boy, what kind of person do you think I am? Is it necessary? But this time, I really have something to ask you. Stop talking. I don't want to listen. I can't hear you. I have something to do. I'm leaving. Zhang Feng was furious and hurried to slip away. Li Shimin pulled Zhang Feng back. After a long time, Zhang Feng was finally willing to sit down and listen to him. In fact, it's nothing. Didn't old you say some time ago? Get some guards to guard the place in Tubo and other properties? We have people, but we don't have suitable weapons. Look at your spear that can break everything. Can you? No. Goodbye, I won't see you out. Chapter 740. Zhang Feng couldn't take it anymore. He had just tricked him into giving up the liquor formula. Although in the end, Zhang Feng was still careful and kept the most important blending and distillation formula. But when he thought of this, Zhang Feng felt uncomfortable. Extremely uncomfortable. He had been playing with the eagle all day, but in the end he was pecked in the eye by the eagle. Seeing that Zhang Feng was about to leave, Li Shimin grabbed Zhang Feng's hand and pressed him down on the recliner. He even personally brought him a cup of tea and said, Feng Zi, you don't have to do this, right? Who are the two of us? I have a lot of businesses. If it wasn't for your help, how could I, Lao Li, be where I am today? So, what's mine is yours, What's mine is still mine. Zhang Feng promptly interrupted Li Shimin. Li Shimin nodded repeatedly. Yes. You're right. But as you can see, it's a chaotic time now. If we don't have a good job, how are we going to survive? Not to mention other things, even the government doesn't like us very much. That's why I had no choice. Taking a step back, Jinla and Tubo and other countries have just opened trade. After this war, no matter if we win or not, the ones who will suffer losses will always be us. Don't you think so? Do you want to wait until the war is over and start again? At that time, do you think we have the capital to reopen the trade route? Li Shimin began to act pitiful. For Li Shimin, this was really a good show. After all, an emperor, which morning court wasn't acting. At this time, when Li Shimin was telling the current state of the country and the situation, Zhang Feng couldn't help but begin to sympathize with Li Shimin. Lao Li, it's not that I don't want to help you. What's the relationship between us? I can't just watch you suffer, right? But as for this matter, you have seen the current state of the academy. Don't worry. Wait for a month. After a month, won't they have refined steel weapons and steel shields? Let's not talk about this. Even if you want me to give you a crossbow with a maximum shooting range of 1,000 steps or an impenetrable armor, I will give you those. But I don't have the time to do that for the time being. 1,000 steps? Li Shimin couldn't help but stare at Zhang Feng with wide eyes. Seeing that Zhang Feng wasn't joking, he hurriedly asked, "Are you serious?" "As far as I know, the most popular crossbow bolts only have a maximum shooting range of 150 paces, and that's the Zhuge Chang crossbow. Isn't it just a powerful crossbow at 1,000 paces? If you wait for a month, I will only need 3 days to produce 100 of them for you. That's every day. Is this enough? If you give me a little more time, half a year, no, just 3 months, the Red Barbarian Cannon and Lao Tzu will be ready for you." Red Barbarian Cannon? Li Shimin's eyes bulged, and his breathing quickened. "What is that?" Zhang Feng decided to be frank. After all, the bigger the pie, the easier it would be for this guy to keep his thoughts to himself. Otherwise, if this guy came today and asked for a sword, spear, and shield, the next day he would beat around the bush and ask for it. It was so annoying. He told them all at once what he wanted to do. Not only would it broaden their horizons, but it would also shut them up completely and give him some time. Otherwise, their thoughts would be stuck in the era of cold weapons. At this moment, Li Shimin was really led astray by Zhang Feng. His mind was filled with question marks about the Red Barbarian Cannon. He couldn't help but ask anxiously, "Tell me, what is this Red Barbarian Cannon? Is it more powerful than the crossbow you mentioned?" "Of course. You should have heard of catapults, right? Catapults and Zhuge Divine crossbows are a combination of these two things. Not only can catapults throw rocks, but they can also throw fireballs and so on. However, the range of the catapults isn't very far, and they are also very complicated. However, this Red Barbarian Cannon is different. Its range isn't as powerful as the crossbow I mentioned, but it is a great weapon when attacking cities and seizing territories. Once the elixir is thrown out, it will instantly explode, and the thing produced by the explosion can cause a lot of damage to people or objects within a 2-zhang radius." Zhang Feng explained the Red Barbarian Cannon with spittle flying everywhere. As expected, Li Shimin couldn't help but shudder at this moment. He was already so shocked by this magical thing that his heart was in turmoil. At this moment, Zhang Feng's words made Li Shimin completely lose his composure. "Lao Li, do you still remember the metal ship I mentioned before? Once the metal ship is built, you can put dozens of Red Barbarian cannons on it. Think about it, what can your ship do? Even if it's a wall, you can blast it to smithereens from afar, not to mention the impact of the ship." Li Shimin's voice was trembling. Although the 5-toothed warship was powerful, it couldn't withstand strong winds and waves. Moreover, the purpose of a ship was to transport things, and it also played an important role in war. However, a real battle on the water was basically a collision between two ships. Regardless of whether the ship won or lost, the damage to the ship would be huge. However, what about this Red Barbarian Cannon? Once it was installed, then... However, Li Shimin also understood at this moment. He calmed down and asked again, "Feng Zi, just tell me directly. What other treasures do you have? Can you let me take a look?" Chapter 741. "Sure. Since you want to know, I'll tell you. Forget about the Red Barbarian Cannon. That's just a toy. If I have time, once my research institute is done, I can even make handguns that are simpler than bows and arrows, let alone the Red Barbarian Cannon. That's just child's play. Once I've nurtured some technical talents, I can even make bombs for you." As he spoke, Zhang Feng's voice stopped abruptly. He spread his hands and said, "But look at my construction site. It's a huge mess. How do you expect me to make those things for you? I have time and a place. Even if it's the simplest gun, although I said that I can make it within a month, I still need a place and time, don't I? I'm not a god. I want to make them for you, but do you think that's possible? This will all take time." Li Shimin was already dizzy from listening to him. The more he listened, the more he felt that those things were distant. He gradually understood what Zhang Feng meant. Is this guy indirectly saying that I'm short-sighted? However, even if he knew, Li Shimin did not have the heart to get back at him. The handgun that Zhang Feng mentioned at the end had piqued Li Shimin's interest. "Feng Zi, tell me about this handgun. What are you talking about? It's a waste of saliva. No matter how much you talk about it, I don't have time to make it now." "No? Tell me about it. I remember that I have a good toy from the previous dynasty. I think it's the personal sword of Emperor Yang of Sui. Zhang Feng's ears perked up at the mention of treasure. Give it to me. I'll tell you about it. Li Shimin smiled. You first. Are you sure that this is the personal sword of Emperor Yang of Sui? Zhang Feng's eyes were burning. Emperor Yang of Sui. Before this amazing person became the emperor, he was quite an amazing person. Unfortunately, he was unlucky and was taken down by someone else. Later generations only had a few rumors about Emperor Yang of Sui. But now, Zhang Feng actually heard about Emperor Yang's personal sword? How could he not be tempted? No matter what, this was something that the emperor had used before. Carrying it around was also a symbol of status. Zhang Feng could not help but ignore Li Shimin's provocation. If you have such a treasure, you should have said so earlier. If you had told me earlier, I would have told you everything. Cough cough. If you want to talk about this flamethrower, the principle behind it is actually very simple, and the manufacturing process isn't that complicated. The most important thing about this thing is its simplicity. How many arrows can an ordinary archer equip on the battlefield? Hearing this, Li Shimin said, generally, there are 30. For light cavalry, there are about 40. That's right, let's just shoot 50 arrows. This is the problem of weight. If it's too heavy, it will affect the speed. If it's too little, it won't be enough. This is the shortcoming of an archer. But once you switch to a musket, this won't be a problem. You should know about that firecracker, Lao Li, right? The ammunition for this thing is gunpowder. The impact of the gunpowder will cause the iron sand to shoot out for a short period of time. The strong impact can easily penetrate an ordinary armor. The strong impact can even shoot through a horse. Li Shimin was shocked. However, Zhang Feng's tone changed. He asked, it shouldn't be a problem for each person to carry half a kilogram of gunpowder, right? As long as the ratio of gunpowder is determined in advance, we can just stuff it into the barrel when we need to use it. Half a kilogram of gunpowder and 5 kilograms of iron sand shouldn't weigh more than 30 arrows, right? You calculate. How many times can 5 kilograms of iron sand and 1 kilogram of gunpowder be used? How would Li Shimin know? Zhang Feng stretched out 3 fingers and waved them in front of Li Shimin's eyes. Li Shimin said in a daze, 30, 300 times? Li Shimin was completely speechless by Zhang Feng's words. However, Zhang Feng did not stop until he was shocked to death. He continued, moreover, the most important part of this thing is a piece of seamless steel pipe. If there is a smelter, I can make a gun for you right now. Really? When Li Shimin heard this, he was instantly energized. Zhang Feng was stunned and nodded subconsciously. When Li Shimin saw this, he grabbed Zhang Feng's arm and pulled him outside. This gave Zhang Feng a fright. Lao Li, let's talk nicely. Why are you pulling me? Let's go to Chang'an City. I'll find you the best blacksmith in Chang. As long as what you said is true, I can even get you a smelter from the Ministry of Works. When Zhang Feng did not tell him the production process of this thing, Li Shimin was a little disappointed. But now, this was undoubtedly a miracle. As long as there was a smelter, he could make it? Then what was he waiting for? As long as he gave the order, how many blacksmiths in the Tang dynasty would not come? What was this? Right now, the war situation was tense, and no one knew what would happen at the front line in the next moment. If they could set up a big killing machine at this time, it would be an overwhelming guarantee for the entire war situation. Li Shimin could see that the Tang dynasty could not lose in this war. Once they lost, the Tang dynasty would not only be facing the Turkic cavalry. It would be everyone. Therefore, Li Shimin wanted to use a perfect war to draw a perfect picture of his political career. At this time, this gun was his hope. Chapter 742. Li Shimin's agitation made Zhang Feng rather suspicious. Lao Li, I say, didn't you just want a few dozen guards? Is there a need for you to be so anxious? Besides, it's not like this toy can be made early on. Even if it's made, without a legal approval, it'll be a disaster. Li Shimin waved his hand, interrupting Zhang Feng. Feng, Z, you should still remember the Lord Zhangsun we know now, right? As long as this thing is good, no matter what kind of approval you want, it'll only take a single word from him, right? Moreover, can't you tell that this is also a huge business deal? Zhang Feng's lips twitched at these words. He seriously suspected that Lao Li's mind was filled with only money. Had he forgotten everything he had said before? Or was it that all he thought about was money? This really was a businessman. Everything he did was related to money. You're right, but I don't dare to touch this money. When the time comes, if you want to do it, you can just say that this toy was made by you. I'll just take the money. Let me say this first. If this toy is done well, you'll make a fortune. If it's not done well, your entire family will be buried with it. You better think this through carefully. Zhang Feng advised again. Think about it. In the history of the past, when has there ever been a person who dealt in firearms ever had a good ending? Moreover, we're dealing with firearms this time. These things can't be compared to cold weapons. Although our emperor is wise and farsighted, not all of his subordinates are as he thinks. If this toy gets hot and causes a disaster, there's no need to talk about how His Majesty will protect you. Those people behind the scenes will destroy your entire family. The first person Zhang Feng thought of was the venomous Hou Junji. In history, this fellow's schemes were unmatched, and for the sake of his goals, he was even willing to sell his daughter. In the end, if he hadn't encouraged Crown Prince Li Chengqian, there wouldn't have been so many problems. But the heavens did not go as one wished. Hou Junji had relied on his status as the emperor's favorite to almost cause the emperor to lose his life and almost cause a second coup at Xuanwu Gate. Once she was targeted by him. That was the consequence. Zhang Feng didn't want to have anything to do with such a person. That would cost him his life. However, Li Shimin didn't take it to heart. He was an emperor. Any emperor would want to establish his authority and prestige, which was also the foundation for the stability of the Tang dynasty in the future. This was the so-called foundation of all ages. But now, on the outside, the Turks were eyeing them covetously. On the inside, the landowning clans and nobles wanted to monopolize certain things, such as knowledge, all sorts of ways to make money, and ways to make their clans prosper for a long time. The landowning clans were too arrogant. They were even more arrogant than the Turks. After decades, centuries, and even millennia, they had used political marriages, teacher and student recommendations, fellow countrymen, servants, county officials, landlords, old officials, and other means to form an invisible net. At the slightest sign of trouble or change in the imperial court, they would instantly tighten the net to protect their own nobles. They would even ally with other landowning clans to do the same. This was fatal to a country. Take the previous dynasty for example. If the landowning clans hadn't interfered, the Sui dynasty wouldn't have fallen so quickly. If these landowning clans' industries and foundations were to shrink the moment they learned that the Turks were heading south, how could the Tang dynasty be safe? It was time to strike a blow. This was what Li Shimin wanted to do the most at this moment. He could even understand Zhang Feng's words, and it could be said that it was something that had been on his mind all this time. However, Li Shimin saw hope from the gun. Take the Guanlong clans for example. Although he had long wanted to exterminate them, it was because they were so big that even he had to be wary of the network, so Li Shimin could only slowly nibble at them. He even reshuffled all the ministers in the court. What was the reason? Wasn't it because he wanted to destroy the landowning clan's network in the court? Li Shimin knew that if he wanted to have real power over the court, he had to centralize power. Although power sounded simple, it was not so simple in reality. Before Zhang Feng appeared, Li Shimin had been dispirited and dejected because he couldn't see any hope. However, as he got closer to Zhang Feng, he suddenly felt that Zhang Feng seemed to be the key to him becoming the eternal emperor that Zhang Feng had mentioned. Especially after the 8 Waters incident in Chang'an and the means to deal with Guanlong, Li Shimin couldn't help but see the hope of getting rid of the landowning clans. At this moment, when he heard that Zhang Feng had such a magical thing, how could Li Shimin sit still? Looking at Zhang Feng leisurely lying on the reclining chair, Li Shimin continued, "Feng Zi, don't worry and do it boldly. I can help you solve any problem. Think about it, the emperor basically knows everything about you now. You can do it without worry. As long as you do it, I believe the emperor will naturally reward you. As for other things, Don't worry. As long as the problem can be solved with money, it is not a problem for me, Lao Li. Chapter 743. Zhang Feng was a little speechless. It's starting already? No, Lao Li, look at how busy I am. Aren't you just setting up a guard? You can just do it casually. Besides, you're acquainted with Lord Zhangsun. You can get some military supplies from him, such as crossbows and the like. Won't that be enough? Is there a need to be in such a hurry? Li Shimin spread his hands and said, How can I not be in a hurry? War is about to break out. Once war breaks out, it will definitely cause chaos. All of my properties are worth a lot of money. Once war breaks out, it will be an irreparable loss. The sooner I get it done, the sooner my heart and the people under my control will be at ease. How could Li Shimin not be in a hurry? He was just short of burning down the house now. He knew his own situation. He knew how many soldiers he had. These people still didn't know if the Turks had any backup plans. Besides, if you hide in the mountains all day and talk your mouth off, how could you know what other people were thinking? It was better to get the hard goods as soon as possible so that he could be at ease. Li Shimin also knew that he couldn't push him too hard. Otherwise, this kid would definitely not do it. He sighed and said, Sigh. Thinking about that treasured sword, I can't forget it even now. However, this thing is still in Tubo for the time being and can't be transported back. Enough. I'll do it, okay? Zhang Feng was finally hung up by Li Shimin. It was simply touching the pot that didn't boil. Actually, it wasn't that difficult to make this gun. After all, he was also a gun enthusiast. He had seen these things and information on how to assemble guns and other things when he was in university. There was everything in the library. The difficulty was in the seamless steel pipe. This thing was really difficult. As long as this thing was created, then everything would be fine. After thinking for a while, Zhang Feng said, I can do it, but it will take at least a month to produce something. You also know that the things on the mountain are very important. I can't tinker with those things all day long. If you can wait, then find some skilled blacksmiths and a guy with all the materials and equipment to move to the mountain. Don't worry. These are all minor issues. Li Shimin patted Zhang Feng's shoulder and sat down with satisfaction. Feng Zi, I know your ability. As for the blacksmiths, I will naturally hire the best, but you have to keep this matter in mind. This is money. Once you make it and I present it to Lord Zhangsun, you will be rich. Now that the border is not peaceful, if this thing can be used in the army, won't you become a great hero of the Tang dynasty? When the time comes, won't it be easy for you to be promoted to nobility? Don't you want to be an official in the court? When the time comes and the emperor summons you, won't you? Li Shimin became more and more excited as he spoke. Zhang Feng's interest was piqued. He couldn't help but imagine. How could I forget about this? The emperor? Then I will be able to be an official in the court soon, won't I? However, thinking about it, it was still very good. Zhang Feng still had self-awareness about this. If he could meet with Li Shimin, he would have come to find him a long time ago. Li Shimin's character of opening up avenues of communication and accepting talents. As for the delay until now, he also knew that the emperor didn't come because of Guan Long's influence in the court. His influence in the court was still very strong. If he went, they didn't dare to do it openly. But who could guarantee that they would do it secretly? Therefore, with this thought, Zhang Feng couldn't help but want to get the gun out. Not for anything else, but if he could make a gun, then wouldn't he be able to make a pistol after a period of training? When the time came, he would get 2 concealed pistols and a bulletproof vest. What was there to be afraid of? He would just go straight to the point. When the time came, it would be time to settle the score. As long as he gave the emperor a bulletproof vest or a bulletproof vest and a pistol when he entered the court, even if he didn't dare to think about it, he should at least be able to become the grand secretary, right? Who would dare to oppose? Lao Tzu shot him dead. Who would know that it was Lao Tzu who did it? At this moment, Zhang Feng couldn't sit still and asked, Lao Li, immediately go down the mountain and find me the best blacksmith. No matter how good his blacksmithing skills are, his forging and smelting skills must be good. Seeing Zhang Feng like this, Li Shimin couldn't help but feel relieved. This time, he finally dragged Zhang Feng into the water. As long as this kid set his mind on it, no matter how they changed these battles, they couldn't stop him. The Tang dynasty would definitely win. I'll do it right away. By the way, do you need anything? For example, oars or something like that? Hearing Li Shimin's words, Zhang Feng patted his head and hurriedly wrote down a list of materials on a piece of paper. He handed it to Li Shimin and asked, "These materials can be delivered later, but the smelting furnace must be delivered first. As for the ores? Just give me some scrap iron." Li Shimin was stunned. Scrap iron? Are you sure? Chapter 744. Li Shimin hurriedly left. He was puzzled. He could not understand why Zhang Feng needed to smelt the firearms. However, he could guess that the materials used to smelt the invincible spear would be used. However, why did he need iron? Moreover, it was scrap iron? After Li Shimin left, Zhang Feng instantly fell into deep thought. Regarding this kind of smelting technique, especially the method of smelting steel, many different methods instantly appeared in Zhang Feng's mind. However, he rejected many of them. Although there were many methods, many of the materials could not be realized in this era. However, in the end, Zhang Feng thought of an indigenous method of smelting steel. It seemed that it could really be done in this era for him. Zhang Feng could not help but hurriedly record down the process according to the things he remembered in his mind. Something has happened. Something big has happened. However, after an unknown period of time, Gao Ken's voice urgently sounded from outside the room. In an instant, Zhang Feng's brush trembled and the brush instantly pierced the paper. Upon hearing this, Zhang Feng's expression changed. He angrily opened the door and asked, "What happened?" "The paper mill. The paper mill is out, it's white like snow." Gao Ken seemed very agitated. He was so agitated that he could not even speak properly. His face had turned dark purple. Upon hearing this, Zhang Feng was stunned and instantly became ecstatic. Go, let's go to the paper mill immediately." Zhang Feng did not care about anything else. He hurriedly passed Gao Ken and ran away. When Zhang Feng ran away, the patrolling Wei Shuyu, Li Qingqian, and Du Go could not help but stare at Zhang Feng. When the emperor went in and came out, they had all watched with their own eyes and did not dare to ask. They were even thinking about when to ask Feng Zi about what the two of them had talked about. But he didn't expect that this big black guy would send Feng Zi down the mountain in a hurry. The three of them couldn't help but be shocked. They put down the work in their hands and hurriedly ran down the mountain. The old village chief, who was paying attention to Zhang Feng's door in the kitchen, saw this and angrily stomped his feet and roared, "Bad news! Feng Zi was tricked by bad people again. Quick, all of you, follow him and see. You, Zhu Zi's father, carry me on your back. I'll go take a look too. Remember to copy your weapons." Alright. When everyone heard this, they didn't dare to delay any longer. They hurriedly threw down the fragrant braised meat that was boiling in the pot and ran away with the porridge, leaving behind a group of women and children who were pointing at their backs and muttering, "Oh, look at Feng Zi, this silly boy. If I were a man, I would tie his head to my leg. He is a good person, but isn't this too much? Serves him right for being sold off and still helping count the money. Isn't that so? This silly kid, not only did he give away 20,000 don of grain for free, he even gave them money? What kind of logic is this? Logically speaking, these ingrates are really too much. They have already eaten for so long, yet they still haven't left and are pestering us on the mountain." Zhang Feng didn't know about these matters. If he knew, he would just chuckle. With the women's vision, how could they see Zhang Feng's plan? Just as everyone was discussing, Zhang Feng rode down Shao Mountain on his mule and killed his way to the front of the papermaking workshop in the mountain valley. At this time, even before he entered the papermaking workshop, he could see a field of white things that covered the entire flat ground in front of the papermaking workshop. At the edge of the bamboo garden, someone had set up densely packed scaffolding. Pieces of paper swayed in the wind, showing off their unique profoundness. At this time, everyone in the workshop had stopped working. Everyone looked at the pieces of white paper as if they were treasures. Even if a worm was attracted by this unfamiliar white color, it would be chased and beaten to death by these fellows. This was even more affectionate than their own sons. Qian Wanli was like a local tycoon. He sat at the entrance of the courtyard with a broom in his hand like a general. Every time he passed by someone, he would sweep that person's body. He would only allow people to touch those papers after he had swept away all the fleas in that person's hair. Who didn't know how precious paper was if they could make paper? Not to mention this kind of thing that was more precious than rice paper. Qian Wanli treasured it even more than his own life. And at this time, a mule's neighing instantly attracted everyone's attention. Other than their dean, there was no one else who could ride a mule. On this mountain, there was an unwritten rule that the dean did not know how to ride a horse. Therefore, the craftsman made a large frame for him and placed it on a docile mule, just like Zhang Feng's armchair. Other than him, no one else was allowed to ride the mule. Because it was easy to recognize. When they saw Zhang Feng coming, everyone hurriedly stood at the entrance of the paper-making workshop as if they were waiting for an inspection. They stared at Zhang Feng with red eyes. Jumping off the mule, Zhang Feng didn't have time to chat with Qian Wanli and hurriedly wanted to see his treasure. However, he was stopped by Qian Wanli. Wait, clean yourself first before you go in. Chapter 745. Zhang Feng was speechless. He could only roll his eyes and let Qian Wanli do as he pleased. However, Qian Wanli wanted to remove Zhang Feng's hairpin, which made Zhang Feng furious. Is there a need for this? Isn't it just a few pieces of lousy paper? Who gave you this rule? You even dare to be Lao Tzu? Qian Wanli's face turned red. However, he still argued, Dean, you don't know. This paper, stop nagging me. If you continue nagging, do you believe that I will make you pick up feces right now? You're revolting. Abolish this rule for me, but you still have to pay attention to hygiene. Those who enter this place must be neatly dressed, clean, and leave no traces on their hands before they can enter. Do you all remember that? Who the F***ck dares to dig their nose for raw paper? If I find out, I'll throw them off the mountain. Everyone's expression changed drastically when they heard that. They hurriedly raised their hands for Zhang Feng to check. However, how could Zhang Feng care about that? He picked up a piece of paper, looked at it carefully, and smelled it. Not bad. This was the smell. This was the color. The paper was very soft. It was not as tall and straight as the paper of the future. This was because of the fiber. Paper without fiber was so soft. However, this was not important. When the paper was placed under the sun, it did not have the fluffy feeling. It blended perfectly with the birch tree's resin. This was very good. However, the only thing lacking in beauty was that there was no bleaching powder. There was no way to bleach it. There were still some tiny black spots on the paper, as well as some things that belonged to the plants. Zhang Feng pointed at the black spots and those things on the paper. He then described them to Qian Wanli in detail. This thing, I won't say anything else. Take a look, what is this thing? I've told you before that this thing must be well protected. Don't let it be contaminated with dust. Remember that when this pulp enters the final stage of forming, you must use the best gauze to filter out the impurities. Otherwise, this thing can't even be sold at the price of straw paper, let alone compare with rice paper. We are all members of the Academy. We will need and use these things in the future. Think about it. If you become rich in the future and your calligraphy is passed down, your descendants will point at the black spot on the paper and ask, isn't this paper made by you? Why are there these things on it? I'm asking you, aren't you ashamed? Do you still want the face of White Deer College? Under Zhang Feng's scolding, everyone's eyes turned red and they lowered their heads. Some of them even pinched the ears of the people around them and scolded them. Qian Wanli was so anxious that he almost cried. When Zhang Feng saw that the scolding was about done, he patted Qian Wanli's shoulder and said, however, it's your credit to be able to make paper in 3 days. After all, this is your first time. I won't punish you this time, but you must remember that the paper has to be as clean as possible, just like people. This is also the principle of White Deer College. People don't need to be smart, but they must be clean. This paper is the same, understand? Damn, Fengzi, you're awesome. However, the reply to Zhang Feng was a sentence that spoiled the mood. Zhang Feng instantly glared at Cheng Chumo. Chang'an scratched his head embarrassedly and pointed behind him. If you want to throw a tantrum, look for this old, the old village chief. Ha! As they spoke, Chang'an and the others walked around the papermaking workshop with their arms around each other's shoulders. That King Du Go even tried to stuff paper into his arms in front of everyone. Du De Bing, if you dare to steal again, Lao Tzu will kill you. Zhang Feng couldn't bear to watch any longer. He roared at the top of his lungs. As expected, the old village chief, who was trembling as he stared at the paper and his eyes were about to pop out, suddenly leaned on his walking stick and roared, "Which shameless person dares to steal? Find the person from Tonghui workshop and drown him in a pig cage." Du Go's expression changed drastically. He dared to act arrogantly in front of Zhang Feng, but in front of these uncouth people he was afraid. If these people were to cause trouble, even the government wouldn't be able to do anything to them. Du Go could only embarrassedly throw the paper out before the people from Tonghui workshop arrived. Only then did they give up. The old village chief personally picked up the paper that Du Go threw on the ground. His whole body was trembling. "Evil creature, you've sinned." Old man remembers that rice paper costs 1,000 copper coins per caddy. "How much is this?" As he spoke, the old village head's wrinkled fingers picked up the paper and weighed it in his hand. "This is at least 2 or 3 taels. Kid, come pay up. This belongs to Tong Hui Fong. If you don't pay up today, I will drag you to the authorities." A few hundred copper coins? It may not be much in your eyes, but you know, in the eyes of poor people like us, this is a year's harvest. Are you going to waste it? Du Go and the others' eyes bulged. "No way, this belongs to Feng Zi, right? We were just joking with Feng Zi. You all know that Feng Zi and I are brothers." "What do I know? I only know that brothers should settle accounts clearly. Feng Zi is still young. If he is fooled by you all like this, he will get into trouble sooner or later. Today, I will use my status as the village chief of Tonghui Workshop to announce that I will temporarily help Feng Zi manage everything on Shao Mountain. Don't even think about cheating Feng Zi of a single copper coin." Chapter 746. Zhang Feng did not expect this either. He hurriedly said, "Old village chief, please take a rest. This is nothing. Isn't it just a piece of paper? I'm just opening." "Opening what?" The old village chief glared and used his walking stick to poke Zhang Feng's chest a few times. As he poked, he said, "See for yourself. Do you want me to find the old Xiuzai to look after you now? Or do you want us to gather the money and bring the young lady of the Zhang family up the mountain? Or do you want us to look after the house for you for the time being? This prodigal son of a bitch. How can you throw away something that costs a few hundred copper coins just like that? Even if the heavenly king Lao Tzu comes today, you can't not pay up." Zhang Feng was dumbfounded. Dumbfounded. Li Qingqian, Wei Shuyu and the others were also dumbfounded. It was fine when they were quarreling before, but what was this old man doing today? Cough cough. "Old village chief, we definitely have to give you the money. This is a big pie, Rung. But please don't lower yourself to our level. We don't know any better. Please bear with us. But we are discussing something important. Can you?" Li Qingqian showed his refined side and said a few words to the old man. Only then did the old village chief calm down. But looking at the yard full of paper, his turbid eyes were full of stars. This was all King money. How much money was this? "From today onwards, this paper mill belongs to Tong Hui Fong. Without our permission, no one is allowed to come in." Li Qingqian and the others were not the only ones who did not expect this. Even Zhang Feng did not expect this. The corner of his mouth twitched. He signaled Zhu Zi's father with his eyes and asked, "Old man, what's the matter?" Zhu Zi's father sighed and said, "Isn't this because of you? No one said anything when you opened an academy on this mountain. But you also realized that when you said you were going to open an academy, no one paid attention to you. Didn't you realize anything?" Zhang Feng's head shook like a rattledrum. How would he know this? "This is because you ruined an immortal. Look at what you're doing." "What is this?" "This is something that only a prodigal would do. Have you ever dreamed that your family's immortal would crawl out of his grave and scold you?" "I want to." Zhang Feng shrugged. Zhu Zi's father continued, "Last time when you had diarrhea, we wanted to think of a way for you. Look at that wine, that meat, that..." Zhu Zi's father recounted every single one of the things that Zhang Feng had done as if he knew his family's treasures. It almost made Zhang Feng wonder if the usually honest and stoic Zhu Zi's father had been changed. Why did he start talking so much? "Look at what you've done. You've given away 20,000 dawn of grain for nothing. Even if you've been conferred a title, it's useless. Have you ever thought about it? If your family's foundation is gone, what will the academy rely on in the future? Look at your Baijiu, we all treated it like a treasure and hid it away. But that damn bastard Old Li, he directly took away your family heirloom. Now you know why the old village chief went crazy. Why did he do that? He's afraid that your family's immortal will look for him at night. That's what we all mean. No matter what you do in the future, you have to go through us first. We'll be your housekeeper. Or I'll go down the mountain and carry Miss Zhang up for you. You choose." Zhang Feng was dumbfounded. So it was like this. But Zhang Feng also wanted to slap himself. Why did he scare people last time? Now it's fine. "Old village chief, look at this matter." "Fine, then I'll have to trouble you to worry about me in the future. As the saying goes, having an elder in the family is like having a treasure. Zhang Feng's family passed away early, but today I have you as my family. It's God's blessing." Under the threat of the old village chief's marriage contract, Zhang Feng became more and more terrified. Wasn't it just a housekeeper? This was good. Otherwise, those damn fellows would try to trick him every time they came. It was impossible to guard against them. Now that he had the old village chief, after settling the old village chief's matter, Zhang Feng clapped his hands and said, "Everyone, come here. I'll announce something today. From today onwards, the old village chief has the right to decide the income and expenditure of the paper mill. No matter what expenditure it is, it has to be approved by him. You all understand?" Qian Wanli still hadn't reacted and nodded in a daze. Seeing that everyone agreed, the old village chief treasured the white paper and shouted, "God has opened his eyes." While trembling, he escorted everyone to the temple to burn incense. Only then did everyone take a deep breath. "Feng, are you really going to hand such a huge business to an outsider?" Li Qingqian was a little confused. Zhang Feng smiled as he looked at the old village chief. He shook his head and said, "No, they are my family. It's been a long time since I felt like home." Zhang Feng's eyes were a little moist. He waved his hand and said, "It's been hard on all of you today. Let's go and drink. There's enough wine and meat today." Chapter 747. In front of the barbecue stall at the entrance of the food factory, Zhang Feng drank one can of bamboo beer after another. He wanted to get drunk, but he didn't know what was wrong with the beer today. He just couldn't get drunk. In this foreign land, Zhang Feng suddenly felt the taste of home. That's right, it was the taste of home. Ever since he went to university, he had never heard his mother's nagging, his father's scolding, or his grandfather's concern. At this time, when he looked back, it turned out that the simple people in Tonghui Lane had already treated him like family. Every time something happened to him on the mountain or when he couldn't sleep in the middle of the night, he didn't know how many pairs of caring eyes stared at him in the dark. What was this? This was the care of a family. For the first time, Zhang Feng felt that his life was so complete. Lao Li and the others were Zhang Feng's brothers. They were also the first friends that Zhang Feng made when he was at his most helpless in the Tang dynasty. Later, Lao Li introduced him to a large number of friends and brothers. Later, he met Jing Shu at Yan Lai restaurant. What was this? This was a confidant. Later, he met the mysterious old scholar who cared for him like a grandfather. Later, he was willing to use his precious jade pendant as a betrothal gift and arranged a marriage for him. What was this? This was caring. At this time, Zhang Feng understood why these people were so anxious to arrange blind dates for him. It was because they felt that Zhang Feng was too lonely. And he drank a big mouthful of beer. Zhang Feng's eyes were wet. Li Chengqian and the others also saw that Zhang Feng was not right at this time. So, although everyone was drinking, no one dared to breathe loudly. Everyone looked at Zhang Feng worriedly. They also knew that Zhang Feng should be thinking of his home that had disappeared in the landslide. No matter who it was, they would feel lonely. Even they would sometimes feel lonely in the midst of the hustle and bustle. Humans had feelings. They would all feel lonely. They always saw Zhang Feng with a sinister smile on his face. Who knew if he would cry in the middle of the night? If you want to cry, just cry. Li Qingqian patted Zhang Feng's shoulder. Zhang Feng took a deep breath with reddened eyes and glared at the crowd. Who the F***ck said that Lao Tzu cried? Come, let's drink. Lao Tzu, he didn't cry. Lao Tzu is thinking about how to sell these papers. Zhang Feng's excuse, which didn't sound like an excuse, made everyone sigh helplessly. Li Qingqian bumped his bamboo tube against Zhang Feng's and asked, "Didn't you promise to give this paper to Mr. Bosher? Don't tell me you want to sell it?" Zhang Feng smacked his lips and said, "There's something wrong with this paper. I won't give it to him for the time being. Qian Wanli, let me ask you. According to the improvement method I just mentioned, when will the second batch of paper be ready tomorrow?" Qian Wanli stood up and bowed. "If we rush the work tonight, we will be able to finish it by tomorrow noon or by the evening at the latest. And it's about 500 caddies." Good. Zhang Feng clapped his hands and said, "If you can finish 500 caddies before dark tomorrow, each of you will be rewarded with 100 copper coins." Everyone was overjoyed. They all stood up and thanked him. Li Qingqian hurriedly asked, "Then this batch of paper, are you planning to sell it? If you are selling it, I want to buy it." Li Qingqian knew very well what this paper meant. He wanted to be the first to own it, and then, however, Zhang Feng flatly rejected Li Qingqian. "No, I have great use for this paper. It's not for sale." "Not for sale?" Cheng Chimo and the others scratched their heads and looked at Zhang Feng curiously. Zhang Feng said, "You all know that this is how the previous products became popular, right? Momentum?" The few of them instantly understood. "It's momentum. Right now, all the paper in the market is from the Ministry of Works. There are very few commoners who can afford paper, especially Xian paper, which is worth 1,000 copper coins. If we want our paper to be noticed, the first thing we have to do is to let people know that White Deer College has paper. And it's white paper which is better and cheaper than Xian paper. This is the only way to take advantage of the remaining popularity of the braised meat and raise the reputation of White Deer College in the hearts of the commoners. This time, it's the landowning households who can afford and need paper." Hearing this, Li Qingqian's eyes flashed with astonishment. He asked, "How much are you going to sell this paper for? You also know that those who can afford to use this thing are aristocratic households and those scholars." "By literature, at least it's by literature." Zhang Feng raised a finger and said, "What? Only 100 copper coins?" Cheng Chimo's loud voice instantly exclaimed. Not only did the people hear it, even the people at the entrance of the food factory turned to look. Zhang Feng glared at Cheng Chimo and said, "Why don't you see how much this thing can be produced in a day? How much paper was produced today?" Qian Wanli hurriedly said, 300 caddies, we produced 300 caddies today." Zhang Feng said indifferently, "Yes, 300 caddies, and we can produce 500 caddies tomorrow. In the future, as long as the technology is mature, this workshop of 30 people can guarantee at least 500 caddies of paper every day. Think about it, what will happen if there's more paper? Everyone says that paper is expensive in Chang'an. Lao Tzu wants everyone to be able to afford paper. Lao Tzu wants to slap those self-proclaimed landowning households in the face. What about it?